Hello, and welcome back to the Confidence and Beauty Summit, real root cause resolutions that reverse women's hair loss naturally. I am your host, Surreal Vasquez, a multi-certified functional medicine practitioner that is literally obsessed with reversing hair loss naturally. And as the founder and CEO of Belcanics, we bring you this summit to share our vision of a world where hopeless hair loss is a thing of the past, and every woman has an opportunity to break through her limiting beliefs while embodying a new truth that will set her free. And that truth is hair loss is reversible. And today I wanted to hone in on that one sentence that I keep saying, that every woman has an opportunity to break through her limiting beliefs. What in the world could I mean by that? So what I mean by that is that a lot of us that are watching this, myself included at one point, had this limiting belief of, I've tried everything, right? If that's you, just like nod your head while you're listening to this, because I'm sure that this resonates with a lot of people in the sense that you've done the PRP, you've done the exosomes, you've done the spironolactone, the duosteride, you've tried all the things, and you're realizing that your hair loss is not improving. It's either still getting incrementally worse, but just not as quickly, or it gets better for a little bit of time, and then the hair loss comes back with a vengeance. And so you're realizing that you're not really getting where you want to go, and you're not having that real root cause resolution. So you begin to tell yourself that you tried everything and there's nothing left, and that's it. You might as well just start wearing wigs. And so those are all limiting beliefs, because if you really sit down and think about it, there is no way that you have tried every single thing and every single combination, because that matters, and every single sequence, because that also matters. I mean, what about the things that haven't even been invented yet, right? Clearly, you haven't tried those. And so today I prepared a presentation to share with you guys where I wanted to talk about what it means to become a Belcanic, okay? And Belcanics is the name of my program, where I help women go through this process of understanding what are the triggers that are making their hair loss worse, what are the things they can do to help put their body in a healing state so their body can focus on regrowing hair, and how they get to live their life to maintain those results or continue to amplify them. So I'm going to share my screen without further ado, and we will jump into the training for today. Let me know if you guys are ready. And I hope you guys don't mind. I'm just super high energy most of the time. This is just my vibe. So if you like high energy, we're gonna get along, because I love high energy. All right, let's get started. Let's share this right here from the beginning. All right. So, hello, Belcanics. I'm just going to call you a Belcanic, because guess what? A Belcanic is a person that masters her body mechanics to reveal her inner belle. So, nothing says beauty and youth like a full head of hair. And over the next couple of days, throughout this whole week, we're just going to be discussing how you can learn to listen to your body so that you can discover the choices that you're making on a daily basis that are aging your hair. Self-awareness is the catalyst to change. That is a quote by me. I made it up, but it's so true, because if we know better, we do better. And if we don't know and we're not aware of what we're doing that is keeping us stuck, then there's no way that we can break through to a different outcome. Before we get into anything, I want to just a couple housekeeping items. Number one, this is not medical advice or intended to treat or diagnose any medical conditions. And the experience shared by our clients that you'll see in some of the recordings I'm going to play, it's from people that were in our 2 or 6 month programs, okay? And your results will vary and they are not guaranteed. So nothing that I'm sharing today is a performance claim by any means. So this is actually part 1 of a 2-day series, because on Sunday, I'm going to be having a live call, you guys. And I really hope that you can make it and see me there so I can feel your live energy. The topic today is real root causes of hair loss and how you are not a victim to your genes. And then on part 2, which is Sunday, we are going to talk about how many of us get stuck in progressive shedding and thinning, and how to uncover your true root causes. And I want to encourage you not just to come, but to stay all the way until the end, because I'm going to be picking some winners. Who's the winner, you guys? I love winning, right? So I'm giving away a free root cause resolution roadmap, which is coaching package that people, uh, go through in the beginning with me, where we just map out a picture of everything that happened that led them to this point where they're stuck in the progressive shedding, how exactly it happened, and then what's the roadmap to reverse it. So, and then other people are going to win discounted coaching. So they can get a discount on the 2 month program, the 6 month program, the 12-month program, if they are a winner of that. So make sure you go and stay until the end because you might be the lucky winner. Okay, so today I am teaching what took me years to figure out. And this masterclass is a gift to this community just to give you hope and inspiration so that you get to believe in a compelling future, right? Without vision, people perish. And so today it's all about giving you guys the vision. I want to inspire you. I want to change your mind about hair loss and thinning. I want to give you value. I want to change your life. And I don't say that as hyperbole, as Tony Robbins would say. I say that because the information that I'm sharing, if you really take it to heart, if you really let it sink in, it can create the mindset shift that can change your life and get you into that progression of working towards reversing your hair loss naturally in a way that actually works for you. So my intention is that by the time we're done with today's masterclass, you're going to be like, thank God I didn't miss that because that was gold. So first, a little bit about me. Before I even sought my credentials, I leveraged my career in the medical field, working for specialty pharmacies. And I learned that from gastroenterologists, dermatologists, I mean, those were the type of practitioners that I called on. And just I used that to learn all that I could about hair loss. My story is pretty intense. We'll talk about it more later today. But once I learned more about reversing hair loss using my own trial and error, where I literally spent $75,000 in a short period of time because I was just really, that was after I had said I've tried everything. And then when I came to terms that I was lying to myself, that's when I spent the 75 grand. So clearly I had not tried everything, right? If I was able to spend that kind of money later. So, and like $20,000 of that alone was spent on hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And, just like my certifications had a cost, uh, all the supplements, the labs, all of that. Just, I spent it so you guys don't have to. But I was able to obtain an extremely dramatic comeback in my own hair loss. And I realized by God's grace that, oh, man, I cracked the code to get some of these results. And so now you can call me a certified functional nutrition counselor, a true cellular detox practitioner, and a certified event interventionist. And I do post value-based content that people they ask questions about it. And it's with those credentials that I bring you the value throughout this masterclass. I do run a virtual practice now for the main purpose of helping women reverse hair loss naturally. And if you're wondering what type of hair loss I had, just to see if it matches yours, you're going to know by the end of this masterclass why that, in fact, does not matter. So you can see here to the left, this is I have permission to use this, but this is a screenshot from one of my clients that was in one of my programs. She was in the 6 month program. She says, thanks to the good coach we have, I feel so much lighter and less inflamed in my body the last few weeks. I didn't realize how much gluten and dairy inflamed me. And actually, we're going to have Dr. Tom O'Brien talking a lot about gluten in his masterclass. So I hope you catch that. And this is an example of what I mean, ladies. This is 1 week's time. So I'm not saying that you see the thickening that she has there. I'm not saying that you're going to get this level of thickening in 1 week's time. Your results will vary, but this happened in her situation. We definitely had opportunity to divert more blood flow to her scalp, and she had some opportunity to help with the regulating of her hormones for her healing. So there were a couple of things that led her to being able to feel that kind of thickness so soon. And everyone is different, but that's just to give you guys a little bit of context on what's possible. It took me about 2 years to get my results after having hair loss for 8 years prior to that. But like I said, some of my clients have seen differences in like weeks or months. And you might be asking, how? How is this possible? When the hair growth cycle literally takes 3 months, I don't see how she can get thickening like that in just a week. Well, a multifaceted approach that is intentional and not random, that's dialed in and specific to your unique case versus a shot in the dark approach can actually compound time. So the way I see it, if you can put into practice just one thing that you learned that gives you relief, or if I can at least plant the seed of hope, then you know what? I did my job today because that's what I'm trying to do here today. So, first, I have one request. Before we get started, I just need you to be open-minded, okay? See what is possible and see the potential by staying with me today and Sunday. And remember, like I said, there's a chance to win at the end of Sunday's call. So don't miss that. Please stay until the end. Okay. And now the first thing we need to do is we need to break down the barriers that cost you too much already in your life. So some of you are thinking that reversing hair loss naturally, maybe it's possible. Some of you are here because you want to believe it, but you haven't heard enough that really gives you that hope. Some of you, you think you already made up your mind that it's not and that there's no hope for you. But if that really was true, then why are you watching this right now, right? If you really thought that there's no way through this and that's it, there's nothing you can do and you're just going to die wearing wigs the rest of your life, then if you had really made up your mind, I want to challenge you to think maybe you wouldn't be watching this if you had really made up your mind. So the thing is that by not having an open mind, you're going to fall in this trap where you literally allowed your past experiences to determine your future. And if you've allowed your past to determine your future, then what is the point of being alive, ladies? Right? So keep an open mind and do not defend your old beliefs just because you're afraid of being wrong again or being disappointed. Because this is the cost to not having an open mind. Uh, you're basically stuck in a prison that you've put yourself in, and only you have the keys. So try your best not to defend your limitations just because you're afraid. Because what's going to happen is in that fear of disappointment, disappointment is going to self-actualize. Because while you're afraid of being disappointed, of getting let down because the next therapy you tried with hair didn't work, guess what you're feeling? Disappointment. So the disappointment that you're fearing becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy by losing hope. All right. So I just want to give you guys that word of caution so that you can be self-aware that that fear of being disappointed is self-actualizing when you give up hope. Okay. Now, he who builds a high gate invites destruction. So again, that concept of fear becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. You were fearfully and wonderfully made. And without getting too spiritual or religious, fear is not from God. Okay. So I'm telling you right now, if you have this crippling fear around hair loss and thinning, you are limiting the miracle in your life. You have to have faith and confidence. And here's how to do that, because it's easier said than done, right? So a volcanic is somebody who uses her failures to learn about her hair loss, right? So that's what my hope is for all of you guys, that you would reframe what failure means to you. And the way to do that is by collecting data and being strategic. So let's say you took a supplement and it made your hair loss worse instead of better. You could say, "Oh no, there's no hope," or you could say, "Why?" And that's where the power is, in wondering why. When you start to ask, why did this pill work? Why didn't this one work? Uh, why did I temporarily get relief? And does this supplement work better when I use it with this other supplement? Then you're really empowering yourself to make the changes that lead to hopefulness and happiness. Because as humans, we actually find progress to be what gives us happiness, right? It's not getting the diploma necessarily that makes us happy. It's the fact that we were working towards getting the diploma and the anticipation of getting it. You see what I'm saying? Yes, it feels good to finish something, but while you're working towards finishing it, you have hope for a better future. And so if you doubt any of that, just think about how you feel every time that you try something for your hair. And even though you don't have your hair the way you had it when you were in high school, it's still better than it was before. because of this new thing that you tried. Tell me you don't feel completely hopeful and grateful and happy and amazing because you're like, oh, it's working, right? So that's my proof. And what I'm trying to say that there is a lot of happiness just in progress. So I want you guys to be aware of the peace that it brings to keep having the hope and seeing that glimmer that there's a better outcome available to you. One of my clients, she had mentioned that she felt like she failed as a woman and like something was wrong with her because she was having to wear wigs until she found the Botanics of Reversing Hair Loss Naturally program. So I'm gonna like share what she has to say. And I also want to remind you guys that this is not a performance claim. I'm not saying that you're gonna not have to wear wigs if you do this program, but this was her particular outcome.
It's so carefree, just not to feel really ashamed when it started coming out the way it came out. Like, the baldness, the weakness, you washing your hair in strings, coming, a whole goop of hair falling out in the shower. It makes you feel like, what's wrong with me? You go back to, I did something or something's wrong with me. And that's when, you start beating up on yourself. You have a low self-esteem about, your appearance of your own hair. It's going to make me feel really, really good that when I do meet someone, that he knows that some days I can put it in a ponytail. I can take this down and it's about right here. And, it's mine. Or I can go get a clip and put on, which I have, if I need more for that, you going out. So you have options. You don't always have to be ashamed. You can enhance your hair like you put makeup on, but it's still your hair and it's still nice enough to wear out.
All right, so now let's answer this question. Why? Why can't we reverse hair loss and thinning? So in the earlier stages of hair loss, especially, hair gets worse in waves, right? Like it gets thin and then all of a sudden it gets better. And you're like, oh gosh, the nightmare is over. But then it starts shedding again. And then it stops shedding. And you're like, oh, good. It was just my body just corrected it. Then it starts getting thin again, but then it fills back in. But then when the hair loss comes back, it comes back even worse when you don't deal with the root cause. So this is why we see sometimes on Facebook or Instagram, people will have a picture and one day they might have a temple that is like thin all the way back here, but then next week it's only that bad. And so you're noticing the wave-like pattern of the body is already trying to heal itself, but it's not quite fully resolving it to resolution. And so this is why your body is able to heal wounds with scabs, and it can kill viruses with fevers, and your liver can regrow itself even after a piece of it is cut off. If these things didn't happen, then we literally wouldn't live that long on Earth, right? So, can we all agree that the body is constantly working towards healing itself? Dr. Peter Glidden actually makes a big point about this in his talk on day 4. So I share this with you to stress that your body is already trying to regrow your hair. And it has this perpetual process in place that is interrupting that healing process. And if we can uncover the cycles in your body that are trickling into hair loss, then regrowth is going to be available to you. And for those of you that are in my Facebook group, and if you're not in it yet, make sure you join. It's called Reversing Hair Loss Naturally. There's actually a masterclass in the guide section where I talk all about that. So if you guys are enjoying this and you want to have more information on hair loss and thinning, make sure you go to the guide section in the Facebook group, Reversing Hair Loss Naturally. So we have to change our question from why isn't my hair growing back to what's stopping your blood from being rich in nutrients and oxygen? And is there something that's stopping your body from feeding some of your hair follicles? And as long as we have a scalp and we have hair follicles and we can restore blood to that hair follicle that's rich in nutrients and oxygen, then I'm going to proclaim that there is hope for you. But here's the thing, some people say that at some point our follicles die and they scar over. And when that happens, it's too late. It's nearly impossible to reverse hair loss at that point, right? You've heard that before, haven't you? But here's my question. to challenge that belief, because today's all about challenging the limiting beliefs. What evidence do we have that your follicles aren't still there? We know that people who were bald have grown back hair. So just because you don't see the follicle, that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't still hope, is there? So why can't this happen for you? The Cleveland Clinic says that scarring cicatricial alopecia is hair loss that's caused by follicle destruction, and it's usually the result of some kind of inflammatory or an autoimmune disorder. And sometimes it's due to skin injuries or burns or certain medical treatments. And scarring alopecia causes permanent hair loss because hair can't regrow after the follicle is destroyed. And scarring alopecia usually appears as a bald patch where there's typically hair. And there might be one bald area or several. That's literally from their website specifically. They exactly put that on their website. So I realized something when I read that, and just from my experience in the medical community, and this is something I really want to blow your mind with. I realized that the medical community is making the assumption that the follicle is destroyed all over the scalp simply because they can't see it. But the truth is, there is no way for them to know for sure. Even if they biopsy one little area, they're not going to know for sure that that is happening throughout the entire scalp, right? The only way for them to know for sure is they have to biopsy the entire scalp, and that doesn't make any sense. So they would leave you bald in the process. So here's something that you might be thinking. You might be wondering, oh my gosh, do I have scarring? Is this the type of hair loss that I have? Well, there is a way for us to hypothesize whether or not you have scarring that is leading to hair loss and thinning, or it's not necessarily just scarring. It could be, we can call it fibrosis, which is kind of the same thing. We can call it calcifications because we do get deposits of calcium that can lead to thinning. Some women get biopsied of their breast because they feel a lump, and it turns out to be just a calcium deposit. So the body, and I actually teach this in my course, the body will leach calcium from your teeth, hello cavities, leach calcium from your bones, hello osteoporosis, to create a more alkalizing blood pH. So pH stands for the potential of hydrogen, and your blood pH has to be in a very tight knit range. And Dr. Christine Bjorndal, she actually talks about that in her talk about this a little bit there, and she's on day 7. But what essentially happens is that you can end up getting calcium deposits because your body is trying to make up for this acidifying lifestyle that you have. So it's continually having to bring calcium, which is very alkalizing, into your blood just to keep you alive so you don't die from acidosis. And so that can get deposited, which could be a bone spur, or it could be calcifications on your scalp, or it could be calcium uh, balls, so to speak, in your breast, and it can just show up in different ways in different places. And so when it happens in your scalp, it can make it so your scalp is very tight. So if you're wondering if you're having some kind of obstruction to your follicles, here's something that you could do to check. Take your fingers and spread them out and put them right above your ear, but put it kind of like on the side, right in front of your crown, and do that on both sides. And your job is going to be to check scalp motility. So try to move your scalp the way that I am, up and down, forward and backward, and also try to scrunch this area right here. See if you can create some kind of fold. If you can see, my scalp is folding. I know it's hard to see because I'm sharing my screen, but you can see that there's this folding here. So that means that I have enough motility here where blood and nutrients are getting to my scalp. And that's something that I check on a continuous basis. And sometimes I do massaging to break that down. And if you upgrade to VIP, I actually show a video with a product that Christine Schaffner made. So she's also on this summit. And I show you guys how I use that product to help loosen up the drainage in my scalp lymphatics, and help break down some of that obstruction that can happen at different points in your life. And so don't forget to upgrade to VIP so that you can see this video and learn about that product. And when you watch the talk with Christine, you'll learn about the product too. But the point that I'm trying to make is, that these adhesions are what, for example, this lady right here, that's where her scarring was coming from, these adhesions. So we had to work with the body to reverse that irreversible hair loss by focusing on addressing that. So, and you can see here in my picture, I had a lot of scarring. Clearly, I look completely different at this point, but my hair was basically see-through in this picture. I couldn't be in the sun without thinking twice about what direction is the sun shining in? Is it showing that I'm bald right here? Is it showing that I'm bald here? Is it showing that my hair is see-through? And that was a big concern as far as how I looked in front of other people when I was in the sun, or even how the wind blew. Like I would be concerned about that because I didn't want people staring at my bald spot and making me feel uncomfortable, and or just at my baldness, my thin hair in general. And so that, according to the medical community, was not reversible. So these are the different types of hair loss that they say are not reversible. So scarring alopecia, right? So, and I will say that that could be the case if there's a keloid on your scalp, if you had some kind of severe infection where there was pus and the skin was damaged, and then the body healed it, but it healed it completely differently than how it originally was. If there was some sort of surgical incision where you had surgery on your scalp and they cut you, and then when they glued you back together or they sewed you back together, the skin healed differently. Or maybe you had some kind of burn. There was a burn. You were in a fire or something. Someone smacked you with a flat iron, like an iron for clothes, and then you got that scar there, right? So that would be completely different as far as what I believe is reversible. That would also be scarring alopecia, but not something that I would feel confident to say is reversible in those specific cases. But frontal fibrosis alopecia, central centrifugal alopecia, like some of the pictures that I'm showing and I've shown for myself and other clients had those diagnoses, and they've grown back in. Androgenetic alopecia, I was diagnosed with that, and my hair grew back. And there's a bunch of other ones, not just these, right? Some people say your hair loss isn't reversible if you have PCOS, or it just depends like which article you're reading. But any other diagnosis that I missed that you read somewhere that said that you're a hopeless cause was just the author's opinion. And it's really your opinion that really matters because you get to decide if you're accepting that prognosis or not. And my question to you is like, what if I had listened to them? I wouldn't be hosting the summit if I had, and where would we all be? What if you chose to listen to those people and not be determined and not be confident and not be curious enough to give up? How is your story going to end? And I know that you haven't made that decision yet because you're here. So I really want to impart upon you that you're either going to have the regret of trying and not getting the result that you had hoped for right away, at least, or you're going to have the regret of giving up and not fighting for what you really want in life and just having to spend the money and the resources on wigs for the rest of your life. So I really want you to think about that and choose wisely. My goal is for you to become the Mel Fisher of your own health. So for those of you who don't know, this guy over here to the left literally became a billionaire, or at least half a billionaire. Okay. So he half of his $500 million, right? And the way that he became that was because he knew that there was a shipwreck in the ocean, and he decided that he was going to search for the treasure that was in that shipwreck. He was so committed to finding it that in the process, he ended up losing his son and his daughter-in-law. Okay, because they were sleeping on one of the ships that were out there doing the expedition, and they had a pump failure, and the ship capsized and it overturned. And even though it cost him that, he did not give up and he continued to look for the treasure. And 16 and a half years later, he ended up finding that shipwreck. And in order to do that, he had to keep himself and everyone motivated. So every day he kept telling them for 16 and a half years, today is the day. Today is the day. So, how did he keep going through all of those failures and disappointments? The only way he kept going was because of his conviction and his beliefs. And he believed that there is treasure out there and he was going to find it and it was worth it. And so, would you dare to feel this way about regrowing your hair? And, what would you do with $500 million if you were him? And what would you do with having the beauty and the confidence that you want by regrowing your hair if you did adopt those beliefs? And is that worth it to you? Is my question. So, how do we cultivate this new beliefs? First, we have to question our old beliefs. And that's exactly what I had one of my students do first and foremost. Sorry about that delay, you guys.
This get to that point where we could believe and gave us the tools and resources to help us get to that point if we couldn't get to that point by ourselves.
We need to be doing something for mind change. So walking should be one of those things to help clear your mind and things like that. Well, I had tumors underneath my feet, and a lot of it is having bad cells in the body. And so I have another huge tumor on the bottom of my foot on the right side. The left side, I 2020 January, I got removed two big ones. And it's a long name for it. I can't even think of the name, but people get them. And after that, I was scared to walk. I mean, because I had nerve pains, and I just felt like I didn't want to do walking. When I used to go to the gym and kick butt, I walked all over downtown. I just walked. I was a walking queen. And I stopped cold turkey. And I didn't develop a sense that I need to be moving or I need to be doing this. And I really didn't go out and do it a lot. But what you had us do satisfy something in me to say, I'm going to be greater than, just thinking I can't do something. So what I was doing with you is showed me that I can take each process, because it was a process. It wasn't like all at one time we had to do this. It was in stages, and I took those stages, and I got results, even losing weight without even walking. Because a lot of people say, oh, you can't lose weight without exercise, right? And you knew that was a myth. You talked about all those different things and stuff. So I think that right there was my strongest one right there.
Awesome. Amazing.
And I'm not getting surgery.
Feel like I have the tools to better self-lead myself and now I understand how this is partly a mindset. And that's what I'm saying in terms of how comprehensive this program was. It wasn't just about take this pill or use this serum or do this or do that. It was a total program where you addressed our mindset and our helping us to change your mindset, because you really have to have the right mindset to make a difference. I was so confident in what you were telling me, that helped me shift my mindset by itself.
I believe that my hair can grow now. I wasn't able to think that way before. So what changes?
The changes that I'd probably be still wearing a wig. Not really caring for my hair, because I say I can go buy it, and not worry about, being back to that basic natural person that I want to be at this age. Just covering up everything and going in and getting weaves. And I think though this is what changed me. I just threw out about 6 wigs today.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And why is it that you don't have to wear wigs anymore?
Because I feel like the regimens that Bella Mechanics had us do, that it's for life. It's a lifestyle change. So I know what to put in my body. I know what to go back to from feeling bloated or a certain way. I know what to use now. And I think just having this regimen, this routine to go back, like you said, you don't have to do it all year round, but you need to do certain things to cleanse out everything in your body to have good blood cells. So I know that for giving, and I'm gonna stick to that the rest of my life.
Let's talk about the diagnosis myth, girls. All right. So, personally, besides androgenetic alopecia, I was also suspected to have PCOS. And because I had cysts on my ovaries, but it was actually a symptom of estrogen dominance. It wasn't PCOS. And also in my 20s, I did have a surgery. And when I had that surgery and I had the anesthesia and all those things, I had a massive bout of hair loss, which we would call telogen effluvium. But when I worked on myself functionally, I realized that my actual true cause was my body's inability to heal itself and return to what we call homeostasis because I was too toxic. And that's what we call toxemia, a state of toxemia. And the reason I was too toxic was because I was suffering from estrogen dominance. I had heavy metals when I had amalgams put in my mouth. I had exposure to mold. And all those things led me to be chronically inflamed. Inflammation is a huge topic in the summit. And that triggered my genetics to compensate, creating an environment that trickled down into hair loss. And we'll talk about that more later. But the chronic inflammation led to this hypersensitive, overactive, depleted immune system, and which was very busy with candida overgrowth, mycotoxins, parasites, Epstein-Barr virus, and leaky gut. And those were some of my real true root causes. And when I look back and I reflected on all this, you know what I realized? That diagnosis that I was desperately looking for as if it was the cure itself, it meant jack diddly squat. That letter I was looking for in the alphabet soup, the AGA, the PCOS, the TE, the CCFA, like all that crap. I don't want to call it crap because it's in medical literature, but at the same time, for me, I felt like it was useless. And I know that the reason why they need these diagnosis codes is so that insurance is able to bill people, right? Remember, I used to work in the medical field for diagnostic imaging and for specialty pharmacies for about a decade. And so I understand how that community works. And so that's why they have the diagnosis so that the doctor knows how to fill out the code, the doctor staff can fill out the code so that they can mark you in this language that the whole medical community has agreed upon. And so what they do is they'll say, in order to give this patient this diagnosis, they need to have their blood work ranges here for this marker, and they need to have this symptom and that symptom and this symptom. And so we will call that a recipe. So the diagnosis is actually a recipe. And so they kind of have this cookbook medicine. I've heard someone say in another summit, where there's a treatment that matches that diagnosis that everyone agreed is a correct treatment based on that diagnosis. And so they kind of have this one size fits all approach that leads to what I call generic results. But it's the only way to get everyone on the same page. And the thing is that we have gotten into the habit of giving those labels so much power that we end up neglecting the power that we have to heal ourselves. And if you consider this perspective, like, would you think that it is worthwhile to question those beliefs? Especially when it comes to your hair and whether or not it's able to regrow back. And what can our new belief be about what's really causing this global pandemic and what we can do about it? And this global pandemic is hair loss, right? I mean, guys, look at how I used to look, you guys. You see this picture? It's crazy. This is why I'm so passionate about it, because when I looked like that, I was miserable. Miserable. I couldn't think about anything else. And I just don't wish that on anyone at all, even my worst enemy. So, a little bit about the differences between the medical approach and the functional medicine approach. In the medical approach, each diagnosis requires a different treatment, and that diagnosis can be wrong. And that's why the treatment failed, maybe, because maybe they had the wrong diagnosis in the beginning, right? You guys have heard of that before. Whereas in a functional approach, it's personalized and it's a multifactorial approach. And it really requires a top level investment from each client and the practitioner. Like, literally on my intake forms, like over 90 questions, just so I can understand like what in the world happened to this person. And the medical approach, the results, they take a long time and they're far from dramatic. unless you're doing surgery, which has a lot of risks. Whereas in a functional approach, the focus is on getting hair to grow based on how it's supposed to function and what's getting in the way of it functioning instead of a diagnosis code, right? So we focus instead on like, is there enough blood getting to the hair follicle? Does it have nutrients? Does it have oxygen? And what's getting in the way of that? And that answer to that question can be very complicated and convoluted, and it involves a lot of different body systems, not just the hair. In the medical approach, there's an emphasis on slowing down the progression more than there is on reversing the damage. That's what the doctor had told me. There's all we can do is just slow it down. Whereas in the functional approach, we're integrating different body systems as a top priority instead of operating in these ologies. So we can actually get there to be more reversing of the damage so the body can heal itself. In the medical approach, the allopathic medical traditional approach, the cost is not that expensive, let's say, for a medication or a doctor's visit, but the hope is low. The testimonials are low. Eh, I would say there's a low risk in the investment that you're making, but not a low risk as far as the medications that you're taking, and the result is low. Whereas in a functional approach, it's just completely different in the sense that it's a completely interactive experience where the patient gives feedback on and we understand what is required for the best possible outcome. That's very important because in a functional approach, the person is paying for their services and they're investing their own dollars to this. It's not insurance that's paying for it. In this case, when insurance is paying for it, they call the shots. They're the ones that decide if they're covering it, if they're not covering it, how much it's worth, when you should give it to them based on which diagnosis, right? And so there's a lot of power between who pays for it and who the practitioner has an alliance to, so to speak. Not to say that a regular doctor is not going to feel aligned with wanting to get the result for their patient, but at the end of the day, insurance is paying it, not the patient directly. And so they they if they want their practice to thrive, they do have to keep that in mind as they're operating. And so the results that are coming with the patients, it's it's not going to determine whether or not insurance covers it. You see what I'm saying? Also, they have a high patient volume, so they're not able to give as much attention to each person, and it's a little bit less personalized. It's really like cookbook medicine, and it's a protocol blanket approach for everyone. Whereas with functional medicine, it's all about trial and error, and it's that trial and error is built into the program where the clients get coached by someone who's had tools in the tool belt to be able to continue to patiently dig, right? We're not constricted by different diagnoses. And then with the medical approach, it's very one-dimensional. It's targeting one factor and one approach at a time. Whereas in functional medicine, there's a lot of hope that's built into the protocol, especially when the coach has already gotten the results for herself and other students. And in the medical approach, chronic illnesses and a lifetime of treatment with no promises is very normal. The treatment is drugs, it's injections for the rest of your life, or it's surgery. And that surgery doesn't mean that it's going to be successful. And it doesn't mean you're going to have the results forever from that one surgery. Also, there's major risks and possible side effects from each of those approaches. Whereas in functional medicine, it's really reliant on protocols, on listening to the body, on supplements, and a focus on not having to live like that forever, but just to do it temporarily so that you can have a long-term benefit, and instead just really working on trying to get the body to heal itself. So let's just talk a little bit about how the medical industry develops drugs in the first place, because I feel like there's a lot, like this is going to help put things into perspective for you guys. So a scientist is going to develop a drug based on the chemical pathology of a disease. So they're going to have a theory or hypothesis, and they're going to say, okay, we notice that when people have a high level of DHT, we also see that they have hair miniaturization. So then they're going to create a pill like spironolactone, which I tried, that does that. It reduces the DHT. So theoretically, it's going to stop the hair loss from getting worse, Or you might even see a little bit of regrowth because remember, the body's always trying to work itself and they're going to call it a success, but they're never going to ask why the DHT was high in the first place. And so they're never going to create that real root cause resolution. And if you're just taking that symptoms approach, then what's going to happen is you're going to forever be dependent on a different drug or that drug. And you're going to go on this endless merry-go-round where you're taking copious amounts of drugs for each new symptom that arises, and instead of getting healthier, you're getting sicker. So, for example, when it comes to hair loss drugs, I know that there's like this new drug that they're investigating because they realize that prostaglandin production is also present in people that are having hair loss and thinning. And they're thinking like, okay, let's just suppress DHT, let's suppress prostaglandin, and then we're not going to have the hair loss. And that may be the case, but of course you're going to get symptoms from that because there's a whole reason why the body is increasing the DHT and why the body is increasing the prostaglandin production. And so by interrupting the body's natural pathology and not addressing why it did that in the first place, you might have that short-term effect of like, oh, the hair didn't get worse, or we don't see a hair loss and thinning being an issue, but now there's a more serious problem that can come into play. Like this happened with my dad. He had diabetes and he was on metformin for years. I don't know, maybe like 30 years or something. And now, unfortunately, he has kidney failure, or he's probably gonna have to start on dialysis if God doesn't do something merciful. And guys, I a lot of you that know me know my story. I tried really hard with my dad. My dad almost died a year ago, right after my wedding. He got sick with pneumonia, like I want to say like 12 or 13 of us got sick, really sick. From like there was something going around at the wedding. Like we all got each other sick at my wedding, but my dad was the only one that actually ended up getting pneumonia from it. And he was in the hospital, and he has kidney failure, he has metabolic syndrome, meaning that he has high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol. He has a lot of different health issues. His circulation is poor. A lot, he used to be a smoker, just like a lot of things. And so he literally almost died, but I got him to sign something that I wrote at the hospital saying that he was going to do natural supplements to reverse his issues so that I could help save his life. And he did do it. He did it, and he was doing so well that he had lost his license because his vision was so bad. And then they took the license away, or they weren't going to renew it, but then he retook the test and he passed it. So he got his license back temporarily because he was doing the protocol. But then he started complaining about the amount of pills that he had to take. And he was like, I don't want to have to do this. I'll just do the dialysis. This is crazy. I'm 80 something years old. My stomach is old to be processing all these things. And I was like, Dad, we can do teas. We can open up the capsules and we can put the contents in something. But he's just, God bless him, 84-year-old Dominican guy, just very stubborn in his ways. And so we helped him. We helped him live a better quality of life longer, but he eventually stopped because he didn't believe and he self-sabotaged. Like he was just like, oh, this stuff isn't working. Even though I showed him his blood results and he literally is not even diabetic anymore because for the most part, because he has a continuous glucose monitor on, and it shows that when he wakes up, his ranges are good. It's not, over 100 in a fasted state. And so that's really good. And so he's like, there's been improvements to his health, but because he just didn't believe, and he said to himself like, oh, this natural stuff, it takes too long, and I'm too old, and it's too late for me, that he started slowly not taking it the way that he should, and he would take long breaks, and then his blood work changed, and he was like, oh, this doesn't work, you see, I told you, because he self-sabotaged. And if he had stayed compliant, it would have been a different outcome. But now that his kidneys are way worse, my mom is convincing him to at least do part of the protocol again. And so I don't know how much more time we're gonna buy him. He lives 5 minutes away from me. I love him so much. I'm a complete daddy's girl, for real. I love my mom too, and they're still together, 40 plus years together. But my dad, he had me when he was in his mid 40s, and I just feel like I didn't get enough time with him. But the point of the story is that the metformin is what put the nail in his coffin, right? And that's what I'm trying to stress to you guys. And so reversing the Volcanics of Reversing Hair Loss Naturally program uses supplements to help the body regulate so it can heal itself. The goal is not to get you on a ton of supplements forever. It's not. It's to constantly change the supplements, the timing, the dosing based on what your body is responding with, so that we can get you to a point where it's able to naturally regrow hair that is thick, unless you have some kind of incident. And now those incidents end up being a gift, right? The incident of a bunch of hair shedding is like, what caused that? That's the question that we're going to ask ourselves. So what I'm trying to say is that we're trying to get your body to a point where it's naturally focusing on growing thick hair unless we have a trigger. And that trigger could be too much sugar consumption. It could be mold. It could be dust. It could be something. But now these triggers become a gift because we know how to fix the body. We know how to support the body to help heal itself. So now it becomes information that we use as to things that our body responds to that we know is a problem for our health, right? So that is something for you to remember. And if you can focus on hair loss being a gift because it's forever a tool that will show you when your body doesn't like something, then you have escaped the matrix. Hair loss can no longer be devastating to you. I have like a short testimony that I'm going to share with you guys about a situation with an autoimmune result that I got. So I was getting into this point in my life where I was just growing more spiritually, and this thought came into my head that I should anoint myself. And then I was just like, I wonder if I made that up or if it was actually like God that kind of put that in my head. So I just went with it and I grabbed some oil that I had prayed over and I was like, okay, God, when do you want me to anoint myself? And then literally the next thought in my head was in the next song because this TV behind me was playing Pandora. Pandora is an app that chooses music for you. You do not create a playlist. You just say your favorite artist and it chooses songs for you. And so I'm standing here in front of that TV as it's choosing songs for me and I'm holding this oil and then this thought says like you can anoint yourself on the next song. So I was like, wow, I don't think I made that up. That's kind of weird. Then the next song comes up and the song was called Healing Oil. And I was like, what the? I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like God is my DJ, like he's talking to me through the music. So I anointed myself and I prayed for healing because that's what the song said. And then God was like, pray with thanksgiving as if I already healed you. Like these were thoughts that came in my mind as I'm going through this experience in real time. So I started thanking God for healing me as if he already healed me. Little did I know, after I left that experience, I went straight to the lab. And what was going to happen was I was going to come up positive for an autoimmune condition. Okay. Which it could have been rheumatoid arthritis, it could have been lupus, depending on the blood work. But what actually ended up happening was God miraculously, instantaneously healed me. And this is how that story goes. After I prayed with thanksgiving, as if you already healed me, the next thought in my mind was, watch what the next song is. And I was like, what? Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like God is talking to me through music. The next song was called This Is How I Thank the Lord. And I was like, oh my God, he just told me to pray with thanksgiving. And now the song says, This is how I thank the Lord. So as I said, I go do this blood work. A few days later, I get this diagnosis. And I was like, what? I don't get it. God told me to pray with thanksgiving as if he healed me. Now I got this freaking blood test that says that I have like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. And I said, why would he do that? And I was like, he either wants me to believe that he already healed me or that he's going to heal me, either with, whatever I figure out or whatever my doctor that ordered these tests for me is going to help me figure out. So I called my doctor and I was like, listen, I need you to repeat the blood test. Like, put the lab in, call the lab, put the order in. And I think God already healed me. And he was like, what? I was like, just trust me. So reluctantly, he puts in the order again. Meanwhile, I went to church for like some experience that they had as we were doing like 21 days of fasting together. And they said it was so full. There were so many people. I wanted to go up for them to pray for me, but there were so many people. I couldn't make it to the front. So they said, like, just find people around you to pray with you if you can't make it to the front because there's so many people. So I did that. And I grabbed these two girls at different times and I was like, telling them the story. I was like, we need to pray to thank God for healing me because I just got this diagnosis, but he told me to pray with Thanksgiving as if he already healed me. And so I'm sorry I get emotional, you guys, because it's just so miraculous. So we prayed, and that night I came back to my house, and I had actually been reacting to my house because I had just found the mold in my air conditioning unit, and I had just treated the mold with this like fogging mist that JW, not JW, that Jeff Bookout, who's also on the summit, was talking about. So I had done that, but I was still responding to the environment. I was still having symptoms because at that point I didn't have any air cleaners in my home yet. Like I hadn't figured that part out. And I didn't follow his directions. I did it longer than he told me to do because I just like I thought like more is better. And so I didn't have all those details on how to micro clean my home that well. That's the reason why I had him on here so that anybody who wants to do that, they can do it the right way and they could get a better result. And I was reacting to my house. And when I came back from that experience, I had no more symptoms. I could be in my home without sneezing, without feeling stuffy, without having thinning hair from my home. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I think something just happened. Like this just feels miraculous. And when I went to go repeat the blood work and I was sitting in the parking lot 30 minutes before my appointment, I still didn't have the results. And I was like, God, I just need you to like, please give me the results. Cause if I go in there and I don't have the new results, I'm just gonna wonder like what really happened. And it's like 5 minutes after praying, the results come up on my phone. Everything was negative. Seriously. Like the reactivation or not the reactivation, but actually at that point I had reactivation of Epstein-Barr virus. And I I'm not sure if that miraculously got into range. I'm not sure if I don't think he repeated that. He didn't repeat that. He repeated only the autoimmune markers and some of the hormone things. And so like everything was negative. And it was a miracle. And it was because I had faith. And it the hair loss situation that I was going through because my home was making me sick at that time, it became a gift because it wasn't like I ended up getting this autoimmune condition from it because I didn't, know better. It was like my hair thinning from my home making me sick showed me that if I didn't pay attention to it and start working on healing, it could become more serious and I could get an autoimmune condition. And I temporarily did get it, but I had this miraculous healing. And I mean, you'll hear me talk to one of my clients during this series named Jen. She had an autoimmune condition that we were able to, by the grace of God, put into remission through some of the healing work that we've done. So it's not to negate that there's still some tangible things that we can do to get the healing, but I want to share the story to show you guys the miracle of faith, and that's one of the reasons why I'm having this talk today to really nail that into your head, how important it is to have faith. And I think it's a beautiful thing to also be able to surrender this to a higher power. And while I have all different types of people in my program, like I have people that are Buddhist or Hindu, or they're like New Age, or, I'm like, everyone is welcomed. Um, but I do like to share like my experiences and my stories and just like have people be able to lean in to surrendering to a higher power through this experience and just having hope and trust. So next slide. All right. So your seemingly unrelated symptoms are clues, right? When you go to the doctor and you tell him, like, oh my gosh, like my eye is twitching, and he goes, that's normal. It's only because he doesn't have a symptom, a diagnosis, I should say, to slap you with to give you a medication. That's why he's gonna potentially say that's normal. I remember when I first saw mucus in my stool for the first time, I called some hotline and I was like, hey, is this normal? And they're like, yeah, that's normal. Well, it's because there was no diagnosis and no medication for that. But it's not normal. And I know now as a functional medicine practitioner. So if you're telling your functional medicine practitioner that your eye was twitching, then they're going to be thinking, well, what led to that? what kind of dysfunction does this person have in their body? Maybe they have toxicants that are hiding in their nerves, and the toxicants in the nerve is causing that twitching of the nerve, and that's leading to that. What were they eating? Were there toxicants in the food? Was there some kind of pollutant in the air that they were breathing in? uh there's a lot of different things that are going to come into mind, like what's the blood sugar like? Is the blood sugar too high, and is that causing nerve damage, right? Because that's why uh diabetics end up having neuropathy, or they have nerve damage. It's because of the blood being so filled with sugar, being toxic, so to speak, creating that damage. And so, like, we're also going to be wondering about the environment. Like, when your eye was twitching, was there anything else happening? Like, were you also sneezing, or were your eyes watery? So all of these things can give us some understanding as to what was happening in the whole picture that could have added to the issue. JW on this talk, he uses this term that the solution to pollution is dilution. And so he places a big emphasis on making sure that you get fresh air into the home if you want to dilute the pollutants that you're inhaling at a time, so that your body's able to process toxicants out at a normal rate, so it doesn't become compromised and completely overfilled with toxicants. So even like what you're saying, like if your eye was twitching, but you're in the middle of an argument with someone, that's also a clue that we would use in functional medicine to try to understand, like, was it because you were releasing a bunch of stress hormones at the time, and that had an effect on your nervous system. So my point is that everything is the clue, and the assessment forms that are provided when I begin coaching my students really help put together those clues, so we can start understanding what is that roadmap to what we call Healthyville. And I'm going to talk about more. I'm going to talk more about what that looks like, what that roadmap looks like on Sunday's live call. So make sure you don't miss that. So here's what Balkanics graduate thought about the functional approach versus the medical approach.
Thinks they're just signing up just to grow their hair. It's so much more different than that. So prior to this course, I can't tell you how much money I spent on doctors and on supplements. And you go to this doctor thinking, oh, I'm going to fix this part. You know, maybe it's your female doctor, or you go to your regular doctor, and then they put you on something, and then you go to a nutritionist, and then you go to maybe try the functional doctor route and spend tons of money there. And by the time you're done, you have this cabinet full of medicine, and everybody has given you different advice. And then your next route is you're about to have to go spend money in a mental hospital because you don't know what to do. And so I think the value of your program is you're all of that. Like, you put it together all in one simple plan, and you don't have to do the running to all of those other places, which makes it, I mean, yes, you're not a doctor, but you're able to put it into simple terms where everybody is able to kind of follow that, and just make it so much more easy.
Being on the program with you, I have to say that my energy level is so much better, because this is a person that stayed bloated, and I had a lot of gastro problems, you know, so.
Amazing. Doesn't it, like, we feel like crap for so long, but we start to think it's normal. And then when we start feeling better, we're just like, oh my gosh, like, you almost like forget that you were bloated. So like, you just realize that you're not anymore, and you have like, now you have the energy to do more things, and you just like, forgot life like this, because I was living like that for so long. I forgot that's not normal. So that's great. I'm so happy for you. It seems like you have like a better quality of life. So
Right.
that's great.
Yeah. I think the passionate was number one, because you can't have passion without caring. So the caring was next, because you cared on an individual level of what each one of us was feeling as we talked about up here. And when you taught on a level of a PhD. I'm not just saying that I was a pharmaceutical rep. Most doctors does not even look up stuff. They go to school and they forget. They just want to surrender by saying, stop doing this. That's all they're going to say, or take this drug, you know. But you breaking it down, it's a little scarcity that you put on us too, because it's like, well, you know, if you continue doing that, this is your results. And you showed it on a lot of reports that you went out, you researched. So I love your research. You did a lot of research for us. And it was proven through all the presentations. You had a lot of PowerPoints. And I think that's so important. You weren't just talking, just the talk. You did a proven 97% was proven yourself why you were doing it. The other 3% was just being a natural human being that gone through this yourself.
So I think Surreal as a teacher is probably the best teacher in terms of this particular topic that you're gonna find. And I say that because her passion for this topic and her thirst for knowledge is unprecedented. And the thing that you're going to get out of Surreal that you're not going to get out of all these other businesses and services and Facebook pages that you see is authentic, genuine care for you and your concern. She doesn't approach it as a blanket, one size fits all. She really wants to understand what is your issue, where do you think it's coming from. She even will read your blood work and really address your specific need and help customize a program for you. Like I remember she went through my diet with me and said, well, instead of eating this, try that. And I was able to replace really bad foods with some really healthy foods, really healthy alternatives. So I think I just can't express enough how my confidence and just feeling that I was cared for and that she really cared about the outcome. And she wasn't just about checking a box to say she helped so many customers. Like she truly wanted to see us be successful in our hair loss journey. Cyril, I have said before I even met you, I go, there's got to be somebody out in this world that is losing their hair. They're smart enough to figure this out and care enough to share it. I've said that since 2008. 2008, somebody that's losing their hair, smart enough to figure it out, and you know, it cares enough about people. And that's who you are.
You manifested me here.
I manifested you. I prayed for you to be my wife.
So cute.
It is, I don't blow smoke, so I'm just telling you, like, you have no idea.
So you might be thinking right now, well, what about genetics? All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is my adoring father. As you can see, I kind of look like him, don't I? This is what he looked like when I was 5 years old. This is me and my sister when we were 5. Psh, lots of hair going on there, right? And this is my mom. Look at how much hair she had. Hello, right? This is I want to say like 1991, right? And if you look to the right, you can see my dad. Well, first of all, you see my adoring husband. Guys, isn't he handsome? He's so cute. He treats me so nice too. I love him so much. And my beautiful niece, she's so cute. She has a lot of hair. But anyway, besides that, you're gonna see here my father, who now is very bald. Right? So this is what, almost 40 years later, so to speak. I mean, I'm 38. So this was a long time later. And my mom has a lot less hair, as well as my dad. So clearly I have the genetics. I have the genetics to be bald when I am older and for my hair to progressively get worse. And my hair loss started when I was 24 years old. And so that's why you saw it culminated in 2020 to how I looked at that point. It was, you know, 8 years of suffering, not knowing what to do, 10 years of working really hard, 2 years of working really hard to figure it out. So it was like a 10-year journey of just getting to where I am now. And so clearly genetics doesn't mean that there's no hope and that's it, you're done, forget it. My parents gave me those genes, but that wasn't my destiny, and it doesn't have to be yours either. Genetics can influence your hair loss when it's influenced by your environment. So in my particular situation, my mom and I have both been exposed to dust. Dust is very toxic to us, both of us. She had a carpet in her home for 20 years. As a matter of fact, when my father almost died last year, after the hospital, my husband and I moved into my parents' house, and their 20-year-old carpet and their AC unit that has never been dusted or micro cleaned, uh, it was making my hair thin in their house. Not to mention, I was also super stressed. I was stress eating, and I had been on a really strict diet leading up to my wedding. So I was like finally able to eat more things that I wanted to eat because I fit into the dress. But on top of that, I was stressed out, and then I was in that dusty environment. So my hair actually got thin temporarily. But like I said, it wasn't like, oh no, what happened? It was a clue. I was like, oh wow, mom, did you know that your house is leading to your hair loss? Because I mean, look, I came from you, and look at what it's doing to me. And she ended up finally ripping out the carpet and putting in some floors, but she still hasn't dusted the AC unit and micro clean the house. And I still, like, if she were to work with me for me to reverse her hair loss, I would have to repair the damage that was done to her skull. So you can call it skull widening. This is the skull expansion is the technical term for it. But she has this growth right here on each side of her scalp. And this is what happens to me too, genetically. When I have more hair loss and thinning, that leads to thinning all over her hair. And so if she let me, if she followed my coaching, we would be able to shrink this, and her hair would get more blood to it that was rich in nutrients and oxygen. But there's also some gut healing work that needs to be done with her. And she's just not very compliant. So sometimes, like Jesus couldn't do miracles in his own town, right? So it's just like one of those things where you try, but she's not at this point in my life, I haven't been able to get her to do the coaching. So the point is that uh it was really the environment that was making us sick. It's not just environment. It's like the environment is a trigger that makes your internal environment get messed up. And you got to do both. You got to fix the toxicants exposure, and you have to restore the damage and get things working properly again, and trigger the body into a place where it can start healing itself. And you got to do both things, and then like repair the damage that was done as well. So you got to do all those three things to get to the outcome here. But we can actually influence our genetic expression so that we go back to a state where our hair follicles are growing and thriving. So to do that, we have to detox, we have to induce homeostasis, we have to repair the damage, because as Judith Stern says from the University of California, Davis, genetic loads the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. And I believe Dr. Jess Armine on this summit actually mentioned that too. So the environment is the stress, the surgeries, the endogenous toxicants that our bodies create, like the Candida overgrowth or the H. pylori, which are commensal organisms that just proliferate when our immune system is suppressed or it's overburdened. We have the exogenous toxicants like the molds, the dust, the lead, the poisonous food. And then we have the low-grade chronic infections that I was just talking about, the acute infections and viruses as well. Like we have Epstein-Barr virus, we have COVID, we have different viruses that could be living inside of us. And that's what influences the genetic expression of the hair loss turning on. So I'll tell you guys a little bit more about my story to make this clearer. My internal bucket overflowed with toxins, which made me surpass my allostatic load. And that caused progressive hair loss symptoms because of my environmental triggers that were both internal and external. The external environmental triggers were the mold exposure in my car, and more recently my home, heavy metal exposure from improper removal of my amalgams, and just being alive at the time I wrote this presentation. It was 2023, but just being alive in 2025 in general, you're gonna get a sugar addiction, uh, because all the foods are just filled with sugar, right? And that can create a fungal imbalance. Epstein-Barr virus, most people end up getting that. I think like 50% of the population or more ends up getting that just from like kissing people and sharing drinks. When I got off of the patch, which was a birth control patch, that was the biggest trigger for me. The patch was actually keeping my hormones in check. And then when I took it off, my body didn't know what the hell to do because I had taken away the synthetic hormones that were regulating it or making it behave the way that I wanted to. And so my internal stressors were triggered by the external ones, right? So those were all the external ones. But my internal stressors were I became androgen dominant, I became estrogen dominant, and even I had a little bit of elevated cholesterol um because like my body was doing that to compensate for the inflammation I had in my body. And then my hormones even were like lower than I wanted them to be because of the mold exposure. And I was genetically inclined to not having the vitamin sufficiency that I needed to get the healing that I needed, just like kind of based on my genetics. And I'll talk about that later. But all of this triggered and perpetuated candida overgrowth, which made me crave sugar. And I binged on it all the time. And this actually triggered leaky gut because candida overgrowth can create leaky gut. And then that leaky gut perpetuated and triggered my stress hormones overfiring. And so that I got into this cyclical cycle where I just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And for those of you who don't realize what the allostatic load is, the allostatic load is this invisible line that represents the amount of toxicants that your body can withstand before it starts developing diagnoses and you get a whole bunch of symptoms. So this is the area that we live in when we're in high school and we can eat whatever we want. We can binge drink over the weekend and everything. Then we go to work like nothing ever happened. This is the area under the allostatic load is where we live when we're young and carefree and never gain weight no matter how we eat. Now, being over that allostatic load is where you have the hair loss, the high cholesterol, the diabetes, like not type 1, which is a genetic situation where your pancreas aren't able to release enough produce enough insulin, but type 2 that you develop as you age, which is a lifestyle disease, right? All of these diseases that we get later, like hair loss, as we age, is a lifestyle disease. So that's the allostatic load. So what I'm trying to say is that the external stressors started filling up this bucket, and what made that go over the tip is that the external stressors started leading to the internal stressors. The external toxicants led to candida overgrowth, led to uh, you know maybe H. pylori, which is also very common with hair loss. So all of that is it starts from the outside and then it goes into dismantling the inside, and then that's how we end up getting these cyclical progressive diseases. So that's the point that I am trying to make here. And so I wonder what a map will look like once we piece it all together for you, right? But with so many factors, it's no wonder hair loss can be so aggressive at times. I wanted to talk about DNA tests real quick. DNA tests were really helpful in confirming and making sense of things that I had already figured out by listening to my body. Uh, but at the same time, while it was helpful, I don't really feel like it was absolutely necessary for me to do what I do because I figured out by the time I did the DNA test, I had already figured out everything that the DNA test was sharing by listening to my body. So my DNA test said I was lactose intolerant. Well, guess what? Every time that I was eating dairy, I was getting mucus forming, like my speech, all of a sudden my nasals will feel congested or I had a lump in my throat. Um, and that also meant that I would have stagnant lymph, right? And so it would be I would notice that like my lymph nodes, I would feel them closer to the surface of my skin, and I like my lymph nodes would feel hard and swollen when I ate the dairy. Now, I've done a lot of gut healing, and because of that, I also can tolerate more dairy without getting those symptoms. And that's the beauty of working on your health. You end up becoming less sensitive to food and having less food allergies. My DNA test said I was non-celiac gluten sensitive. Well, guess what? Every time I ate gluten, even corn and rice, which has a type of gluten in it, I would have symptoms like pressure in my temples or pressure in my sinus cavities or brain fog or even hair thinning. My genetic test said I was prone to diabetes. Well, guess what? My dad had diabetes, as I mentioned before, and when I ate too much sugar, I would get numbness and tingling in my fingers or puffiness behind my toes, like where my toes stemmed. Behind that, I would get some puffiness there, or my tongue would get white, or I would get bloated, or I would have hair thinning, or I'd have mucus in the stool, or I would get constipated. So my body was telling me that I was prone to diabetes and that I didn't like when I had too much sugar. My genetic test said that I favored a moderately low fat diet. Well, guess what? When I ate too much fat, I would have symptoms like I'd have swelling around my stomach and my love handles. And at one point, when I tried keto, my hair loss got even worse. But I was doing keto all wrong. And you'll see that if you listen to day one, Maria Emmerich, she's like the keto queen. And she basically said I was doing keto the wrong way. I was eating way too much fat and not enough protein, and that was part of the problem. So, but either way, that's the point I'm trying to make. I was eating so much fat and my body was having symptoms. My genetic testing also said that if I had a diet that was too high in starches, I would struggle because that could lead to insulin resistance, which is diabetes. And so the symptoms that I had when I had too many starches was I was tired, or which meant that my blood sugar got up really high and then it crashed down, which is inflammatory. And my genetic test also told me that my liver had an inability to detox well. I was genetically impaired, which made me more sensitive to mold and other toxins. And but guess what? I knew that from observing my environment and seeing how I reacted to mold and other allergens. So, for example, there's this concept that's called toxicant-induced loss of tolerance. And so that is exactly what happened to me when I used to have a thick pile rug in my room, in my bedroom. That thick pile rug had so much dust and so much toxicants in it that I started losing tolerance to toxicants in general because I was constantly breathing that in every time I was in my room, 8 hours a night, breathing that in. And so, yes, most of these genetic tendencies that I have are related to my ability to utilize and process food. But just in general, like they were traits that were passed down to me through my genes. But whether or not I had the test, like it was helpful to have that test and to have proof of what I was already noticing. But the point I'm trying to make is there's so much power in listening to your body and being able to notice these things on your own without having to always rely on a test. So, the takeaway about hair loss and genetics, right? If science blames hair loss on genetics and it says, guess what? There's nothing you can do. You're just a victim. Then they get to save you with a pill. And so they make medications to interrupt the chemistry that's present during the development of the disease. But that triggering event that led you to your hair loss is what turned on that genetic expression. And your genetic tendency is really just a bio-individual series of events that takes place in your body due to the state of your internal and external environment. And so, what I'm trying to say is that they're there for a reason to help your body compensate for the imbalance that you're expressing. And that is why your genes are dialing up or dialing down depending on your choices. You can manipulate the expression of your genes. They are not your destiny. And I found out that my genetic tendency to hair loss after taking the DNA test was something that I didn't have to worry about anymore. I didn't need that test to figure out how to reverse hair loss naturally, but I did reverse it with God's help, his divine guidance. And by learning to observe like what was going on in my body based on the decisions that I was making, how the body is supposed to work, where it all goes wrong, what my body likes, what it doesn't like, and how do I support my innate healing mechanism. And I hope that you'll be learning that too, starting with this masterclass. Once you master the art of becoming a volcanic and making new choices after listening to your body. So here's another client that had something to say about that.
Changed a lot because I was able to read myself and know my own body. And that's huge. I feel like there were so many puzzle pieces, and I had all the puzzle pieces, but they were all over the place, and I wasn't able to put the puzzle together until you came along. When you're wanting to do or fix your hair or grow your hair, it's not just about put something on your hair and you're going to be able to fix it. There's so much more to it. And anyone that wants to take your course or wants to be able to grow their hair has to know that it's not going to be a magic pill like, oh, put this on your hair and you're going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to be fixed. You have to be able to put so much more into it. And you have to be able to change your whole mindset and your whole body and your nutrition and your eating and everything. And I think that's what I learned is there is no easy fix. And it is going to be hard work, but it is worth it for sure. And there's you support everybody through it, and that's the best of all. I've learned how to read labels better at the grocery store for sure, and for me, I really had to learn how to be more prepared and have those foods in my house so that I don't grab if I'm hungry, because I have other people in my house and teenagers that are not eating like I'm going to eat and have no interest in it and will not do that right now. So, you know, I don't want to grab their food when I'm hungry. So being more prepared, having it at home and shopping for it and being able to read labels quicker of things that can be called different names that are still things that I'm not supposed to be eating. I feel like I've gotten better at that.
I feel like I'm in control of my hair loss, and I've never felt like that before. And if I do what you tell me, it stops. If I do what you tell me not to do, it starts. And just the amount of stress that has been reduced for me, because if my hair starts shedding, I know why. It's because I haven't been doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's like clockwork. Like you go on your program and it stops. And you know, everyone's like, well, how long does it take to see results? I see results in a matter of a couple weeks.
You explained it so thoroughly that I can understand, like easily understand it and know what was going on in my body. And I was able to get a lot of that information to help me with my growth.
I now can pass up certain foods that I thought was like, oh, I gotta have that. But now I know I can pick one thing, like, you know, something that I really like, and I can have that week. So now I schedule out, it's not a mind game, it's actually something that you need to do for yourself. You know, like I thought bananas was bad. They're good for you. They're water, you know, they're substance. But, you know, certain things that you start like picking up that's natural and eating it because it has a lot of water in it, and it's just gonna go through you anyway. So I think my habit of grocery shopping has really changed, and I stay in the stores a lot longer. My deliveries are different. Everything that I do is different because I not only believe, you know, sometimes people like wasting money on different courses and different coaches and, you know, and not getting anything out of it. And it takes a while. It does. That's why sometimes it's good that you open it up, you go back and assess, you know, what you did 3 months ago, 90 days ago, and see if you're still on the right track. But I think it's all about habits and sticking to it.
All right, so what is the real root cause of hair loss? To understand that, we must first look at how hair grows. So hopefully this is the moment that things start to come full circle for you. What's important to notice in this photo is that there is a dermal papilla that hosts the hair strands, okay? See this dermal papilla? And there are arteries and veins, which are blood vessels that are the life force to the dermal papilla, right? So these blood vessels right here, these are the arteries and veins that go ahead and they feed the dermal papilla. Now, the blood vessels carry nutrients and oxygen throughout the body, towards the heart and away from the heart, but they're sustaining life for the entire body. And the thing is that if this anatomy is uninterrupted, then hair growth should prevail. But what gets in the way of it? Hair grows through nerve tissue. As you guys can see, there's a whole bunch of nerve tissue right here, okay? And nerves are made of fat, which have an affinity for toxins. So everyone puts so much energy into understanding how hormones affect hair, but no one is really focusing on how hair grows in the first place and what could be getting in the way of that. And hair loss happens when hair can't grow. So there's a functional aspect to hair growth that people are not understanding, which should actually be the main focus. So DHT, for example, may cause miniaturization, but it's important to understand that its presence, the presence of DHT, actually kicks off a cascade of events where, there's prostaglandins, and prostaglandins can actually be what is constricting and contracting in an effort to bring healing. And so DHT also wouldn't be produced as much in that area if there was less inflammation or toxemia, which could be the cause of the inflammation, for the body to be in need of modulation. Okay, so the body needs to modulate inflammation when there is this chronic inflammation that does not end, right? So it might be producing DHT to help modulate inflammation, and it's not so much about like you just genetically have this tendency to produce more DHT. There's a reason behind it. So if we were to hypothesize the real root causes based on the anatomy, I would say they include, but are not limited to, inflammation of the nerves, right? So when you're feeling pain or swelling, or maybe you have redness on your scalp, and it could be due to toxicants hiding in your nerves that are impairing function or blood flow. And I don't necessarily have a study to prove that, but just in private practice, just noticing people will eat sugar and then all of a sudden they get pain on their scalp. And then after the pain is gone, at some point there's thinning, right? So clearly there's a connection there between the signs of inflammation, which are pain, redness, swelling, burning. Those are all pain, the signs of inflammation. So there's a lot of nerves there. So maybe there's inflammation of the nerve tissue there. Toxemia. Toxemia sets the stage for your hormones to be out of whack, right? You have too many toxicants. Your liver is supposed to filter all those toxicants. Your liver is supposed to also balance your hormones. So there you go, guys. Too many toxicants can lead to your hormones being out of whack. And it could also lead to decreased cellular regeneration and communication, because your cells, and I teach this in my course, there's like a whole world inside of the cell, and that's called the cellular matrix. And there's a whole world outside of the cell where the cell lives, and that's called the extracellular matrix. And in that extracellular matrix, you have the cell receptors, and then you have just, when you have stagnant lymph and toxicants that can't leave your body, it can live in that extracellular matrix. And so when your cells have toxicants in it and it wants to purge it, it can't, because of, if there's toxicants outside, it won't, right? And so what'll happen is your cell will self-destruct early, in an early cell death called apoptosis, right? And unless you do have the space to be able to release those toxicants. And so toxemia can be this scenario where you're having early cell death and decreased cellular regeneration and communication, because if the space around your cell is filled with all these toxicants, it's going to make it harder for the hormones to make it to the cell, to attach to the cell, because that cell is going to be inflamed, which hardens the cell wall. Then there's also restricted blood flow. So if you're having calcifications of your arteries, or you're having blood pressure issues, or your diet is bad. If your diet is bad, you're going to divert blood flow to your scalp. And I talk about that later, but blood sugar and viscosity and poor lymph drainage. So when your blood sugar is high, it becomes viscous, it becomes very thick. So that makes it hard for your blood to flow. It becomes like lava. Lava is very slow. And so that's going to make it harder for blood to travel everywhere at the appropriate rate for regeneration and for things to function the way that they should. And then when your blood flow is compromised, so is your lymph. And Dr. Christine Schaffner talks about that on our talk. And so when you don't have the blood and the lymph flowing, you have blood flow issues. Also, the quality of your blood is huge when it comes to hair loss. And if your gut isn't able to break down food and then have it go through the tube, which is your colon, and then have the colon disperse those nutrients into the bloodstream at the appropriate time, the quality of your blood is not going to be rich in nutrients. If you're not getting enough uh, nutrients into your diet because the soil is depleted, that's another issue. Dr. Peter Glidden talks about that. If you are uh, eating too many toxic foods, like too much sugar, that's an anti-nutrient. It's literally going to deplete your body of nutrients. So every time you eat sugar, your body needs a certain amount of magnesium in order to be able to deal with that. And so that's going to be another issue that's going to create nutrient depletion. Plus, also, if you're chronically inflamed, then you're going to end up having less oxygen for your blood because the process of inflammation requires a lot of oxygen. And then there's the overproduction of collagen, right? Uh, Sometimes when we see people that have hair loss, like my dad, his scalp is very shiny. His body has overproduced collagen, hypothetically, to help deal with the scarring that has been happening on his scalp, because that's how people get keloids. Uh, the body can overcompensate for the injury by producing too much collagen, and then it makes the skin kind of shiny. So that's another thing that causes hair loss. And then there's hidden inflammation or infection. So when you have hidden inflammation or hidden chronic infection, that's how you set the stage for the scarring to take place on the scalp. That's how you set the stage for candida overgrowth. Candida overgrowth is, we all have candida, but it goes crazy and it overproliferates when our immune system is tired. And that can lead to leaky gut, which is going to put you in this chronic state of inflammation. And that can also affect your motility and how well you're getting toxicants out. If you have candida overgrowth, that can lead to air pockets that is going to make it harder for you to get poop out on a regular basis. So it all trickles down. And then when you have poop in there for too long, you're supposed to poop out the estrogen or whatever kind of hormone that was in excess that your liver went through the process of untangling to get it ready for your body to poop it out. But it didn't get to poop out because it got reabsorbed before you pooped it out because you had the poop in there for days. So that's another thing that happens. And then your immune system and your hormones can be another reason why we're having hair loss, because of the fact that it can lead to decreased shedding in an effort to help detox the body. So what I mean by that is, if your adrenals are out of whack, then your hormones are going, or instead of decrease, I should have said increased shedding. So when your hormones are out of whack and you're releasing a lot of stress hormones, that can lead to increased shedding of hair way earlier than it's supposed to be. And your body could be doing that in an effort to help you detox. So this is kind of like a theory that I have where the body is very intelligent and it knows what it's doing. And if you're having too many toxicants, it knows that every time it makes you shed hair, you're going to drop heavy metals with it, because your hair is made out of organic matter and it pulls what's in your blood when your body's making the hair. And so it kind of becomes, in a way, a detoxification method. Like every time you shed a bunch of hair, you're shedding a bunch of heavy metals, and then your hair stem cells are going down into the hair bulb where the follicle is, into the dermal papilla, and it's creating a new strand, and you're pulling more heavy metals into that strand, which eventually will leave your body. And so your immune system is having a better chance at like working the way it's supposed to when it's not dealing with all that heavy metal toxicity. And that it's the stress hormones that are getting released from being constantly toxic that could be throwing off your hormones in the first place, because your body is not going to have an orgasm and also run from a bear at the same time. It can only release the thyroid healing hormones or the adrenal hormones. That's why sometimes people become hypothyroid, just because they're overusing their adrenals, you see. And then they use it so much, so much, so much that they end up getting depleted in that too. And then like all their hormones are super low for some reason. So this is why the medical community is very focused on hormones and genetics, because they're thinking like, oh, there's such a correlation with hormones, but they're not ever really looking at the role that they really play. So hair loss genetics and hormones. What do we need to know? Hormones are chemical messengers that regulate growth and synthesis in the body. And by definition, it makes sense to think of this route first. But what isn't being discussed in the mainstream is that hormones play a role in our genetic tendencies that trickle down into hair loss if we surpass that allostatic load that I was talking about earlier. Our allostatic load is the toxic threshold that we can all individually withstand without experiencing symptoms. And this is where the science of epigenetics stems from. An overburdening of toxins can and will lead to the depletion of oxygen and nutrient rich blood reaching the hair follicles. But we have the power with our daily choices to influence our body's ability to heal itself by limiting our toxic exposure and assisting our detoxification efforts. So when we exercise this power, we get to limit the overproduction of testosterone, converting it when we overproduce testosterone, it converts it into DHT. And so we get to exercise controlling that by just being aware of our ability to detox and our exposure to toxicants. And this is also how we can maintain a healthy level of estrogen. So, if we do we all agree that the body is always working towards trying to heal itself? Like after I explained all of that, I hope you can understand that the body is always working to heal itself. Our genetics are going to influence how the body tries to heal itself. We can be genetically inclined to be androgen dominant or estrogen dominant. In my point, I was both. I had a genetic test. I had symptoms of androgen dominance, like I was having body hair growth in unwanted places, like my chin, easily able to develop muscle if I tried, but prone to cystic acne, which is very common in PCOS. So I had these symptoms of androgen dominance, but I also had symptoms of estrogen dominance where I had cellulite and fibroids in my uterus and cysts on my ovaries and heavy periods and endometriosis. I didn't have endometriosis, but it's possible when you have estrogen dominance. Like you can have a harder time building muscle, and you can have endometriosis. So these are all like if you're looking at this list and you're like, gosh, I don't have any of those things, then it doesn't mean that you don't have the genetic tendency to have hair loss. It just means that your genetic tendency to have hair loss is probably coming from having high blood pressure, or having low blood pressure, or some kind of other genetic trait that interferes with your body's ability to get enough blood to your hair that's rich in nutrients and oxygen. I'm going to talk about hormones for a little bit. Excess estrogen, estrogen dominance. I talk about that a lot with LJ Johnson in my talk with her. It actually can contribute to having hair loss. And I'm just going to quickly talk about why, but you got to watch the talk with her to hear even more about this. Estrogen dominance will burden your liver by making it harder for you to detox, okay? Your liver is supposed to metabolize excess estrogen. That's what helps balance your hormones. And if you have a gut that is not healthy, then you are more prone to estrogen dominance because you could be producing beta glucuronidase, which is an enzyme that is going to affect your body's ability to detox appropriately because it's going to start releasing toxicants that you're supposed to be pooping out. And so you have a compromised gut. The compromised gut creates an enzyme that makes you release harmful estrogen metabolites. And you end up getting into this negative feedback loop because this all affects your immune system. And your immune system is going to be compromised because it is having just like this wave of toxicants that you're exposed to that when it tries to get rid of it, it can't and it gets re-released. And so then you become heavily dependent on your gut microbiome being diverse to have a healthier immune system, but you're unable to do that. The estrogen dominance actually robs oxygen from your mitochondria, which in turn creates oxidative stress. And that oxidative stress can create hair loss. So, a stress on your body is always taxing the immune system. And your hair needs nutrient and oxygen rich blood to reach the follicle in order for it to grow and be thick and strong. So if you're going to have less oxygen for your hair, if you have estrogen dominance. And many of us are prone to estrogen dominance simply because the liver pathway that metabolizes the excess estrogen could be genetically weak. And a compromised microbiome is going to trickle down into an inability to detox appropriately. So you might be asking yourself, like, oh, you know what? My hair loss, I think that it's related to hormones because there was some kind of shift in my hormones at the time that I started having major hair loss. Like maybe it was menopause, maybe it was you got PCOS. Maybe for me it was I got off of birth control. But it's leading us, like all of these events, if we're not careful, it can lead us to that hormone trap, that thinking that only hormones are the issue, and that's not the case. Hormonal imbalances can affect your liver's ability to detoxify, and hormones modulate inflammation and they can overproduce when your body's trying to self regulate, which causes some of these undesirable side effects. Your body is going to convert one hormone into another hormone in an attempt to create homeostasis. So that's when the body might take testosterone and is going to turn it into DHT. And it's turning it into DHT because DHT is way better at modulating inflammation. Or sometimes your body's going to take androgens and it's going to turn it into estrogen. And so your body's doing that through the process of aromatase. And the problem is that sometimes this mechanism can ironically lead to some hormonal imbalances that we often see in our labs. So the hormone production or the transportation of the hormones can actually be compromised when the environment that's affecting the cell has way too many toxicants in it. It's going to affect the sensitivity of your cell to be able to receive the hormone. Blood sugar also is very important. It's a precursor to hormonal balance. And that's really going to influence how resilient your immune system is, right? So if you think about COVID and how grave people were with COVID, how sick they got when they got COVID, if they had diabetes, they were much more likely to get sick. And so we see this tying in the sense that when someone has diabetes, their blood sugar is elevated, which makes their blood very thick. And it also affects your body's ability to um, harmonize hormones effectively because of the fact that elevated blood sugar is tied into your stress hormones, very closely. And so yet again, we see this theme where the immune system and detoxification are implicated with each other. So the hormone issue with the hair isn't really the hormone itself. It's our genetic tendency to produce hormones as a regulatory response. So hopefully that's making sense for you guys. But if it isn't, this will make it a little bit clearer, okay? When it comes to androgen dominance or elevated DHT, it's the problem isn't the elevated DHT. The problem is the inflammation that doesn't seem to be at bay with your immune system alone. And that's going to cause your body to regulate androgen and prostaglandins to respond to that. So the problem is really what's causing that consistent inflammation in your scalp. And it's not just in your scalp, it's happening all over your body. Maybe there's a low-grade infection that your liver can't detox you from effectively, and your immune system isn't able to correct it. And so we think about like what causes and corrects these infections. It's bacteria, right? That's why we take probiotics to help heal the gut. That's why we take antibiotics sometimes when we have infections. Having the right bacteria in the right balance is healing to you. And when it comes to estrogen dominance, right, the problem isn't like, oh, you have too much estrogen, which you can have even if you have low estrogen. It's the ratio that really matters. But the problem is the ability or the inability for your body to get rid of estrogen fast enough before it recirculates in a toxic form. And the problem is really excess estrogen that's overburdening your liver, which is your master detoxifying organ, which puts you over that threshold of the amount of toxicants you can withstand, which is the allostatic load before you start developing symptoms. So you can have estrogen dominance, like I said, even if you have low estrogen. but it's the type of estrogen that you're producing when you have estrogen dominance, because there's a harmful type that is the type that creates cancers, and then there's a protective type that's a type that like protects your bones, right? So, and it's all in relationship to progesterone as well. That's how you determine whether or not someone is estrogen dominant. But the real problem is that when you become estrogen dominant, you have a way harder time of being able to stay below the allostatic load, because you get into that circle where your body's re-releasing estrogen into the body, and then the estrogen ends up making your bile clumpy, and then your bile is supposed to conjugate to toxins, and then it's not doing that well because the bile is clumpy. Like there's a whole situation that makes it harder for you when you're estrogen dominant. What's much more effective when it comes to your hormones and just being able to heal your body so it can effectively reverse hair loss naturally is focusing on the top 5 negotiables. The 5 non-negotiables, the 5 physical pillars that are foundational to healing and hair growth. So a lot of practitioners do like playing target practice. Like I know that when I was first going in my healing journey, I went to this doctor that was trying to put me on hormones, and he put me on these bioidentical hormones. And I'm not saying that there's never a place for them. There might be a place where, we've tried everything, and just no matter what we try, this person is unable to make hormones on their own. So that would be a place where it's okay to do that. But the question is like, what did you try to help this person make hormones on their own? Did you try anything? How hard did you try? And what did you try? Right. And so uh, it's much more effective, instead of playing target practice with hormones, to, or even with, a supplement, is to really just create an environment where the hair can improve and it can be sustainable by focusing on these 5 pillars. So for example, there are patients that can take thyroid medication for years, and they're going back and forth to the doctor's office, and they're looking at the ranges, and they're deciding based on the blood work if that range is worthy of a change in the medication. But their symptoms don't always get better, especially the hair loss. And so like Andrea Nakayama, who's one of my mentors, she had Hashimoto's, but she, still has beautiful hair. And, she was able to help her body uh, not be developing antibodies towards her thyroid by focusing on these 5 pillars, instead of just, focusing on thyroid medication alone. I think she eventually did take some thyroid medication, but without doing some of this extra work, you're never going to get sustainable healing. So those 5 pillars are blood sugar balance, circulation, gut healing, sleeping regularly, and addressing inflammation, right? So those are non-negotiables that we really need to focus on in order to modulate the immune system and its ability to detox. When it comes to circulation, some of the foods that are going to help you create that environment for fluid blood flow are going to be your citrus fruits, your leafy greens, and your berries. There may be a period of time where it's beneficial for you to stay away from all fruits, but if you incorporate these into a healthy, balanced diet, then it can help with your lymphatic system to flow appropriately. And I talk about that with Christine Schaffner, like the importance of the lymphatic system and hair growth and flowing, because that way your body's able to get nutrients and hormones carried to your cells, which are necessary for the body to grow, right? And if you don't have blood flowing, then you don't have healing. That's why diabetics end up getting amputations. Their blood is so thick that it can no longer flow. And now there's no blood flow, there's no life, there's no washing of the cells, there's no nutrients to the cell. So then that toe ends up getting infected because bacteria comes onto the scene to deal with the issue. And then it gets gangrenous, and then they don't want the infection to spread, so they have to cut off the toe. So that's just an example of why the blood is the healer. And then there's also gut health, particularly going number 2, right? Which is part of not just optimizing digestion, but also detoxification. Because when we poop, we're getting rid of toxicants and toxins, you guys. So the gastrointestinal tract really sets the stage for how well your immune system is working. And when you evacuate in the toilet, by making sure you have enough fiber-rich foods or even enough minerals in your diet, like aloe is really good for that. Green juices are really good for that, or even having, in some cases, mineralized water with pink sea salt. That's all going to really help that detoxification process and your gut health. The third one, chronic inflammation, you are going to wear out your immune system, which is going to make you so susceptible to these overgrowths, like the candida overgrowth. Like everyone has candida, but they decide as a community to over colonize in your gut when they know that you cannot fight back. The reason that I ended up getting COVID was because I went to a concert and there was like a bunch of people there, and I was doing fine. My diet was great, everything was perfect. And then I was in this weight loss challenge and I didn't know any better at the time. Remember 2020 was when my hair was at its worst. I said, "Oh, let me go ahead and eat all these protein brownies." So there was these protein brownies, and I did the macros and the math, and I realized if I was able to eat like 10 of these brownies a day, then I could reach my protein goals and just have some weight loss. But it was literally from me eating sweets all day. And it was healthier sweets. It was like coconut sugar, and it was healthier sweets, date sugar and whatnot, but it was still sweet and it was just too much sweet. And because I had that, I think I had like over 100 grams of sugar eating those protein brownies. And then I had the virus, I had COVID inside of me, but I wasn't showing any symptoms until I did that. So it was like 1 or 2 days of eating protein brownies all day long to eat less calories, have a high amount of protein, but have way too much sugar in that process is what ended up my immune system going down. Next thing I knew, I lost my voice. I felt like death. It was just horrible. And it was because the sugar made my immune system very, very weak. And it made those symptoms show. So, just another example as to how sugar is very inflammatory, and it can make you susceptible to other things. Because then, when I had that fungal overgrowth of candida overgrowth from having too much sugar, that can lead to leaky gut. And so, foods that you would want to eat to help you with chronic inflammation are berries, fatty fish. Of course, you want to make sure you're sourcing that appropriately. You don't want to get farm raised salmon. That's toxic. It's not good. They even put antibiotics in salmon. There's a whole documentary about that if you want to watch it. And leafy greens, nuts and seeds, turmeric, extra virgin avocado, I'm sorry, extra virgin olive oil and cacao. So those are some foods that help with inflammation. When it comes to sleep, a major player in detoxification and your immune system is sleep. If you're not sleeping, you're going to have such a hard time healing. And the liver is really your major detox organ, and it does repair itself at night while you're sleeping. So, uh, if you're not sleeping, you're just gonna have a hard time healing and being able to regrow your hair. And so there are foods like proteins that are really good for to help you with that. And herbs that I like are valerian root and passion flower to help you with the sleeping. And then when it comes to blood sugar balance, remember how I told you that blood sugar is the precursor to having your hormones be in harmony? So the thing is that hormones, they give commands to your cells, they give commands to your body. They kick off, they are chemical messengers. They kick off processes that either make us survive or thrive. The stress hormones make us survive, but the healing hormones, they make us thrive. And that's the difference between being in a parasympathetic state or a sympathetic state, right? In a parasympathetic, you're using the thyroid hormones, you're using the healing hormones. In a sympathetic state, then you're using your stress hormones from your adrenals. And so that's going to influence your sex hormones, and whether or not they're in harmony. It's going to influence whether or not you are tipping into estrogen dominance or androgen dominance, which all of that has a detrimental effect with your hair. And the reason it's going to influence that is because of when you're using your stress hormones more often, it's having an effect. It's like robbing from your sex hormones because your body can steal your sex hormones to create more cortisol through the process of aromatization. And so being chronically stressed because your blood sugar is too high creates a hormonal imbalance. So hopefully that makes sense. And so there are some foods that you can eat, like nuts and seeds and legumes and sulfur-rich vegetables, avocados. Those are all going to help balance your blood sugar to try to mitigate that being an issue for you. So here is someone that I helped in the past, and I would say that she actually was is a thyroid patient. Like she's on thyroid medications. I'm not a doctor, so I don't have patients, but she's someone else's thyroid patient. And when she came to me after being on thyroid medication for a really long time, that's what she looked like in the picture in the left. And the reason that her thyroid medication was not helping her get the results that she wanted was because they never really got to the root cause of why her thyroid was malfunctioning in the first place. So it was only after we worked on some of the supplements and some of the lifestyle factors that we were able to, and reverse some of the damage that we were able to see a difference in her case. And I would say that these results took her months and she was not the most compliant person. She didn't do too many changes with her diet. She didn't do too many changes except really with the supplements. And so that's why her results are not as dramatic as they could have been, but certainly noticeable. And so I just wanted to explain that to you guys to show that there's results will vary per each person, and it really just depends on what you're able and willing to do and how much energy you can put into this. But the if our bodies are genetically inclined to struggle with its ability to balance hormones, let's say you have a hard time detoxifying through the right liver pathway, then or I should say you're also perpetuating the cycle in your body, right? So like your body favors overproducing certain hormones genetically, and it uses that as a protection mechanism. Like your body favors creating DHT to help you with low-grade inflammation, then you can end up expressing dominance of this type of hormone. Your body's always trying to compensate for damage in an effort to heal itself. And so hormones just play a process in regulating everything. So the alopecia community, they tend to think that everyone just has this one label. But the truth is that if you're genetically weak in the right ways, then you can suffer from hair loss in multiple ways. So the label doesn't really matter. It's never just one thing, it's multifactorial. And this is true because most people have had hair loss at different points in their lives from different triggers. And in the past, it grew back until one day it just started getting progressively worse instead of progressively better. And so the body stopped being able to compensate at that point when that's happening. And yet, even though we know that this is true and we've seen it in our own life and in the lives of others, we're still blindly seeking the diagnosis as if it was the cure itself while we're ignoring some basic truths like you are what you eat and what you can absorb. Food is our biggest form of nourishment or poison. And some of us have been brainwashed to overlook something like our diets. They only spend about 4 hours of nutrition in medical school. So it, culturally, we're indoctrinated to think that the food is not that big of a deal. But if you start thinking about it, most of us are eating food that's highly processed and contaminated. Genetically genetically modified organisms are actually created to withstand being sprayed with glyphosate 4 times more than normal food. All right. And our soils have never been more depleted from nutrition. And I talk about that a lot with Dr. Peter Glidden on day 4. So we literally poisoned ourselves to hair loss. And with the way that we're supposed to actually receive the nutrients on a cellular level that allow us to heal, that's the way that we're poisoning ourselves. And when we think about it that way, of course, food is the foundation to health. And of course, we're having progressively worsening hair loss because we're poisoning ourselves with the way that we're supposed to be healing ourselves. the reason why I'm focusing on diet in this masterclass today is because diet is something that affects everything that we've been talking about. And it's something that you can start working on now to try to get some healing for your hair. Your diet affects your blood sugar balance, which is the precursor for your hormones. Your diet affects whether or not you are calming down inflammation or making it worse, right? Gluten and dairy can exacerbate leaky gut, while bone broth and cabbage can heal it. Your diet can either regulate or disturb your sleep. If you spike your blood sugar by eating carbs or sugar, or you're drinking alcohol before bed, that's going to interfere with how well you're sleeping and how much you're detoxing while you're sleeping. If you have a diet that's deficient in magnesium or vitamin D, that can affect the quality of your sleep and how long you're sleeping. But if you eat foods that are high in tryptophan, that can help you with your sleep, because tryptophan is a precursor for melatonin, and that's found in foods like turkey, chicken, fish, nuts, and seeds. So there's this trick that I share with my clients. I tell them to do what's called the meat pill if they're having a hard time sleeping. So you literally take a slice of turkey and you eat it right before you go to sleep. And because of the tryptophan that you're going to be creating as a result of that, then that is going to help you create your melatonin so that you're able to sleep and get your circadian rhythm regulated. Your diet is also going to determine your bowel habits, of course, right? If you're not eating enough fiber, if you're not drinking enough water, that's going to affect how well you are pooping in the toilet and getting those toxicants out. And that's how people become sometimes estrogen dominant, because they're simply not pooping out the estrogen before it gets a chance to recirculate. Constipation is also going to stop you from creating a healing environment. And diarrhea at the same time can also, not at the same time, but just like on one end, constipation can stop you from creating a healthy healing environment in your body, because you have toxic waste that's sitting there and it's like fuming and it's just creating more toxicity in your body. But on at the same time, in a different note, if you have diarrhea, that's also a problem, because then you're having nutrients leaving you and they're not getting absorbed in time because they went through your system way too fast and your body didn't have the time to process them out of the food and into your bloodstream. And so it makes me think that if someone has diarrhea, that could be the body's way of protecting them from maybe the toxins that were in the food. And the body just thought it was a on a scale of looking at things, it was like, oh, well, if I have diarrhea and get everything out quickly, then I'm protecting myself from getting extra toxicants in the body. And so the body is always very intelligent in what it's doing. The question is, are we able to identify why it's doing what it's doing and addressing the root cause? So when it comes to circulation, if you want to increase your circulation, did you know that if you eat 5 cups of fruits and vegetables, and when I say 5 cups of fruits and vegetables, I mean like 4 cups of vegetables and 1 cup of fruit, okay? Unless you're like temporarily cutting out fruit for a period of time, which I do recommend people do that from time to time. That's going to help you dilate your arteries, and it's going to help you get more blood flow to your cells. Um, Having 5 cups of fruits and vegetables a day can literally improve your circulation 20 to 30%, according to to Stephen Masley, who is he's the founder of this like Institute for Heart Health in Tampa. At the same time, or on another note, if you have one junk food meal, one trip at McDonald's, that can actually restrict your blood flow for 6 hours by 30 to 40%. So clearly diet is, and then we wonder why sometimes our hair feels thinner in a second. Like all of a sudden you notice and your nape, the hair behind your head just feels thinner and you don't know why, or this is feeling thinner and you don't know why. It could literally be because of what you ate that day. And also failing to consume enough water is a big problem, because it's going to make your blood more thick, and which makes it difficult to circulate. So hopefully you're understanding how food is able to help or hurt you in real time when it comes to your hair and your hair goals. So if you're thinking like, well, what's the right diet for me? Most people aren't getting the diet that's right for them because they haven't learned the skill set of being self-aware and in tune with their body. And what's right for me isn't right for you, but hopefully by the end of Sunday's class, you'll be able to understand that process so you can participate in that skill the way that this client did.
Company that did eat so much food. And it's so funny. But taking out like for the hair growth, the corn, certain things like that, I pass up certain things that I know it's not good for me. So my sensors are on more. So that's what I like. Even, when I go out with people, I don't drink as much liquor at all. At all. Sometimes, I mean, I went to my class reunion and I didn't even drink the whole time I was there, and it didn't bother me. So sometimes, just being natural yourself, I come back and I don't even eat the whole day. I just drink celery juice or drink water and, things like that. You just start doing that automatically once a week and stuff. And then just paying attention to the skin, just those little things, washing your hair and, seeing a natural shine. It's just something about it makes you get happy and you don't want to go back to old ways. So that's what I feel about Belcan, what it does. I
Oh.
kind of taught me that.
So I get that not everyone has the tools to stick to the diet that's healing for them, right? But one of the benefits in the program that I have called Belcanics is that we end up being able to inspire each other to change our behaviors and stick to them because we do this in the setting of a group community.
That's the thing, like you think you're healthy, but I like sugar. Probably like a lot of people, I like sugar, but you helped us understand what sugar does to your body. And um, that was really helpful. I think I kind of knew that sugar wasn't very good for you, but when you understand why it's not good for you and what it's doing to your body when you take it, those are in terms of your capacity to help us kind of break all that down and understand that. I think is really helpful. So while my overall health wasn't really an issue, certainly my reason for coming to you was to stop the hair loss. And I feel like I can turn it on and turn it off based on what you have shared with me so far.
So, if you think you need to rely on willpower, let me tell you something. That is way too hard when it comes to a new diet. It is so much easier to create a new identity and to link enough pain to eating the damaging foods and enough pleasure to eating the healing foods. Okay, that's part of what I learned with my training in neurolinguistic programming and being a certified event interventionist. Like, how do we create that shift in someone so that they can stick to these new behaviors? If you have enough repetition, enough self-awareness, and enough intentionality, you can change any behavior and break any pattern. And if you're telling yourself like, "Oh, I can't afford to eat healthy food," guess what? There's actually still new choices that you can make that are better than the ones that you're making now that are literally going to change your hair regardless of your income, okay? Because you could be buying frozen organic vegetables instead of the macaroni and cheese that you're buying now. You could be growing your own sprouts, which is very inexpensive to do. If you have a couple pots and an outdoor space, even if it's just a balcony, you could literally have your own little garden. There's even like these things that you can do now where you have a little garden in your home. They have like these towers that you could use to grow vegetables. And you always have different options. You just have to know what they are and you have to exercise them. One of my students, she started getting results before she even started taking supplements. And all she did was stop eating the crap that she was eating that was labeled to fool you. And instead, she started focusing on eating like the food that she grew in her own garden. So, I mean, you could see that there's just this obvious thickening that's happening here. And it just from focusing on her food and actually learning how to identify foods that were healthy and foods that were not. And here's another example of how important food is. This person right here, her name is Dr. Terry Walls, and I read her book. I recommend everybody reads it. It's called The Walls Protocol. Amazing book. She was a doctor, an actual doctor that was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune condition where the myelin sheath, which is the nerve in your spine, begins to get attacked by your body. It's an autoimmune condition. The body attacks that. And what ends up happening is you have a degeneration of your motility. Clearly, this lady was in a wheelchair in 2007. And her mental capacity was also starting to get worse. She was just having a hard time having that mental acuity. So the clock was really, she was running against the clock, okay? And even in that state, she was so determined, she was so willing to fight for a better life that she took a whole bunch of supplements, and then she thought to herself, "Oh my gosh, like I don't know if the supplements are really doing anything." And then she stopped taking them. And then when she stopped taking them, her spouse, which was a female, was saying to her, "Oh my gosh, you're actually getting worse now that you're not on the supplements. Maybe they were doing something." And then bing, she realized, wait a second, I can get these supplements from food. So she got very intentional in finding out where all these nutrients were coming from, which food she needed to eat more of. And she started combining the supplements with the food and then just different practices for detoxification. 1 year later, ladies, the lady's on a bicycle. Okay? She went from a wheelchair to a bicycle in 1 year by focusing on her diet. And she was a doctor and she was on the drugs for multiple sclerosis in the beginning. And when the drugs failed her, she said, I'm gonna have to do something else, similar to my story. And that's how she ended up doing that. And now she's an advocate for trying to include this modality in allopathic medicine, like just doing studies trying to convince them like we really need to create this and just adopt an integrative approach worldwide when it comes to health and healing, because if we're not, we're missing the mark and people are going to stay sick if we don't. But then again, we also have to look at what is the benefit for people staying sick. There is a financial benefit for some people, right? If people stay sick. So that's something that maybe that's why it's so hard for her to try to create that change in that community. But she's been able to make waves despite that. She has been able to influence and make some kind of change. So I'm very proud of her for that. And I was inspired by her story. So, while there are other poisons in our environment that we're being exposed to on an everyday basis, and the accumulation of everything is what's really making our hair loss such a big issue, so aggressive, so rampant, food is literally the most important of them all. And it's something that I can coach you without taking you on as a client. So that's really why I was spending so much time talking about food. If I'm dealing with supplements, like there are some supplements that are kind of basic, like in the supplements guide. When you upgrade to VIP, you get a supplements guide. So there were supplements that people recommended here that are practitioners here that they use that. And none of it is a hair loss supplement. Everything is just supplements that are helping with the root cause and kind of putting the body in a healing state. So for those of you that upgrade to VIP, I'm actually going to sit down with you. If you get the $97 VIP package, I'm going to sit down with you and go over all of your symptoms and match you to some of the supplements in that supplements guide that are very blanket, right? It's not like I don't have to closely watch someone, because a lot of times when I'm doing supplement recommendations, it's a whole process I have to take them through, and I have to watch them for symptoms and I have to readjust according to what they're experiencing, because the goal is to keep your hair, right? But there's some blanket supplements that I get to recommend to you guys if you take me up on that offer. But to get like these huge transformations that you're seeing in some of my clients that agreed to be recorded and share this information with everyone, um, this, that there is this level of like I need to spend a lot of time with you. But food, right? Food, I don't need to spend a lot of time with you, right? For you to get that right. I just have to teach you the right way to eat. And once you figure that out, that science of listening to your body, then it's going to become a lot easier for you. Um, it's really just listening to your symptoms and developing the new habits that you can stick to that are going to get you the outcome. So, for example, if you eat out 80% of the time, right? Like, so even I myself, sometimes I eat out more than I should or I want to, just because I'm, busy, and there's in the short term, I have these goals and these things, and I'm just allocating a lot of energy into that for a period of time. And then I'll get to a period where I'm cooking more and doing all those things. But the way that I maneuver that is like I find my healthy go-to snacks, my healthy go-to restaurants, and I'm aware of like what I'm able to eat at that place, and I'm not symptomatic. And so I share that to help you understand that there is a way for you to get the outcome regardless of your situation, uh, whatever that may be for you. And so for some people, I do end up making personalized recommendations based on these like really in-depth intake forms that my clients fill out that are like over 90 questions long, and I'm asking them everything from were you born vaginally or through a C-section all the way to did you get that virus that was going around and the medication for it. And so when people do that and then they participate in 6 to 12 month or even 2 months of coaching with me, it's easier for me to make some kind of personalized recommendation. But if I'm not doing that on a group level, on a distant basis, I am able to help people understand that the diet is key and they can use that to guide their choices to avoid making their hair loss worse. And there are very simple ways to do that. So food and your ideal diet, I want you to be able to figure out by practicing the workbook that also comes with VIP. So when you upgrade to VIP, there's a workbook and it really goes in depth as far as like what to eat, what not to eat, what those symptoms are that could be coming from food or your environment, and then how to document that so you can start piecing it all together for yourself so you can make better choices, because no one is going to know your body better than you, and no one has the same amount of skin in the game, literally more than you, right? So that's something that I wish you guys can take away from this experience. If anything at all, I hope you upgrade to VIP and you get that book so you can start practicing these things, because what I teach you in the book is to start tracking what you're eating, what symptoms you're having, what your poop looks like, and the progression of your hair. And when you're documenting that, you're looking at like not so much the calories, but like what you ate and what time you ate and how far apart that was spaced. How many colors are there in your food? Was it raw? Was it cooked? Uh, and then are the symptoms coming because of the different foods you're combining because you don't have enough stomach acid, or is it really coming because of that actual specific food? If you're able to track it, you can notice like every time I eat corn, I get these sets of symptoms like I showed you earlier. The only way I was able to come to that conclusion was because I continuously tracked what I was eating and how it was making me feel and how my hair was responding to it. And then I would notice too, like if, for example, every morning that I woke up, my hair was thinner. Well, I didn't eat for 8 hours overnight. So there was something in my environment that was making my hair thinner overnight. Because when you wake up, you're supposed to have clear skin and you're supposed to have lost weight and your hair is supposed to be thicker. It's like a reset. It's supposed to be 8 hours of being in a parasympathetic state, releasing all your healing hormones. And so if that's not happening, sometimes you're not able to notice it unless you're really tracking these things and you're able to see like, wow, like I'm noticing like every time I'm in my room, I wake up stuffy or whatever the case is. Don't ignore that. Like your body's trying to communicate something and everything is connected. So those other symptoms, not just your hair, right, are like for the story I said earlier, my client, she was coughing when she had corn chips, or maybe you get a lump in your throat, or maybe you get bloated, or maybe you get a white tongue, whatever. It could also be maybe you get brain fog, maybe you get tired, maybe you get tingling in your nerves. These are all symptoms that are related to a certain body system. And that certain body system could be compromised. And it could be one of the real root causes as to why you're having a lot of hair loss and thinning. And you, if you're not noticing that and putting it all together, you're swimming against the current, especially when it comes to poop. Like your poop, successful people look at their poop. It can tell you if you're having food stuck in there for too long, so you're potentially reabsorbing hormones. It can tell you if you're seeing undigested food in your stool, then you don't have enough stomach acid. If you see mucus in the stool, then you have way too many toxicants and your body's producing mucus in an effort to try to create more ways of getting rid of toxins faster. That's why when people get sick, they end up getting a stuffy nose, or maybe if they have an infection in their vagina, and they're releasing discharge with a yeast infection, they're getting sick and they're producing mucus because their body's producing mucus to get rid of more stuff faster, right? So that's another way for you to start noticing. And I actually have a chart in the book about the different numbers that you could assign your poop as far as the shape and the consistency of it, because that also indicates like if you're dehydrated, just the quality of your gut health as well. And the book talks all about that. And then your hair and whether or not it's growing or able to grow long enough, or if it's shedding more, or if the scalp looks more visible or not. If there's a pattern where things are spreading and thinning, all of that is communicating to you as a symptom that there was a choice that you made that led to that expressing. And so by being able to chart all of that, there's so many clues that you're going to be able to figure out as far as the way you get to live your life so that you have less hair loss and thinning and create this environment where your body can regrow hair. So this is an example of a tracker that I filled out when I was trying to get to my issues, right? This is when I thought that I was eating okay, but I wasn't eating well enough yet. And this actual tracker is in the book, so I'm not gonna go too deep into it. But the point that I'm trying to make is I had some watermelon. I'm like, oh, watermelon, clearly it's healthy. And it was on sale 2 for 1 at Publix, right here in Florida. And so it helped me produce a bowel movement from eating that because the fiber in it, the water in it. However, the combination of the foods that I had on that day led me to having more gas, and I didn't space out the meals enough because soon after I had this like impossible vegan burger and I had some fries because I eat my dinner early, right? And I had some sangria and I had some popcorn and I'm like, man, I ate healthy all day. I mean, I had, superfood mix and I had watermelon and I had salmon and broccoli, bok choy, avocado sauce, sweet potato. I had all these high fiber probiotic foods that while in the earlier part of the day, I felt very clear headed. I felt very sharp and clear and my stomach was flatter and I had some success of like I was feeling good, but not all the way good. But after I had the watermelon, I started having more symptoms and I I I even had some incontinence, which I don't have that problem anymore. But this is just a testament to the miracle that can happen when you listen to your body. The little pee that was like, sometimes happening from like I would release urine in my underwear at times, right? Thank God that doesn't happen anymore. Uh, it was happening from nerve damage because I had way too many toxicants in my in my nerves and it was affecting the signaling from my brain to my urethra, like telling my body it's time to pee or it's time not to pee because that's a nerve signaling that happens where you're telling your body like wait or don't wait, go, right? And so like having the fries, the popcorn, the sangria, and the watermelon close together, it kind of tipped me over the edge. And then I thought that eating that vegan burger because it was better. And then I realized that just eating organically sourced meat was way better than having the synthetic crap in that vegan burger. And then the fries, they were fried in seed oil. And so that was also not good for me. And so and at the end of the night, I ended up having a little gas and my feet were swollen, which means that the lymph nodes in my feet were stagnant. Like they were carrying lymph and it wasn't flowing. It shouldn't be stagnant. It shouldn't be elevated. I shouldn't have swelling. And so that happened from the excess carbs, from the sangria and the popcorn and it just like all those things were creating these symptoms. And so even though I went to the bathroom multiple times that day, I still had uh thinning in my scalp. Like in the morning when I was eating fine, I noticed because I was tracking how much hair was falling out that I had less hair fall when I washed my hair that day. So I was happy about that. But by the time the end of the day came, I had pain in the front of my scalp, which ended up turning into thinning. And then my because some either calcifications or fibrosis or scarring happened after the pain, right? The pain is a sign that there's inflammation, and the body's using pain to try to signify that there's inflammation. And so with that inflammation came more scar tissue damage. And with that came more scarring. With that came more visibility where you could see my scalp more. And so, and then I noticed too that it was it was less pliable the next day because I had more of the scarring, and it was because of what I was eating. So I'll let you guys go to the book and geek out on that and look at all the different trackers and look at all the different symptoms, and you know, just kind of try to make sense of how to do this for your own good, like to like practice this yourself. But it's just really important to get into that practice of trying to understand what your body's trying to tell you and when your hair is getting thinner or worse or falling out more and why that's happening, instead of just blaming it on genetics. So once you learn to become a belcanic, which is a person who masters her body mechanic to reveal her inner bell, you're going to know more which tools to use and how to troubleshoot your symptoms. So I did want to talk a little bit about testing. Okay, and we're almost done here. So while diagnostic labs are super valuable, right? I that's one of the reasons why I spent so much in my healing journey. I feel like if your funds are limited, your money is really better spent focusing on the usual suspects first. So the things that must be in order for your hair to be growing. And so that's like detoxification, supporting your immune system, getting your body to a healing state with the healing hormones, helping your body create, use, and dispose of hormones, inflammation, making sure that you don't have chronic inflammation, that it's only acute the way it was designed to be, having common low grade infections, we got to address that, making sure that circulation is on point and not stagnant, making sure that the blood sugar is balanced, having some opportunity for gut healing, and making sure that we heal the gut as much as possible, scar tissue support, making sure that we help the body's ability to finish that process of not just creating some of that fibrosis or the calcifications in an effort to help with the healing, but also get rid of that after the healing is done. Environmental triggers, of course, we want to look at diet and sleep. Those are the basics to really look at when, and mold is another one too, actually, but that's where the environmental trigger comes in. But those are the basics, right? So I feel like this really gets results more so than chasing labs. I feel like there have been times where people just try to focus on changing the markers in a lab, and they're not really getting the hair as a result of that. They think that if they change the markers in the lab, the hair will follow, but that's not the case, right? Regardless of what the tests show, what you want to see is just results faster, right? So if you go about this with a practitioner that her focus is on regrowing hair, then they should be able to help you get the hair to get thicker while avoiding more thinning while you're doing detoxing. Sometimes you start doing these detoxes or these therapies and your hair gets worse in the process. If you're not dealing with a practitioner that her focus is to regrow hair, then you do have a risk where that can happen. And then maybe they're saying like, oh, you just got to push through, or because but not all of them, right? A really good practitioner is not, is going to be aware of making that experience as comfortable as possible for you. And so that's a sign for you to know, like if you're with someone who's like just bear through it, the extra hair loss for now to get more later, then that's a sign that you're not partnering with the right one that's going to help you with this particular result. And we'll see that sometimes the difference in the results is as detailed as which supplement you're using, because they're not all created equally, when you introduce that supplement, throughout the course of the entire therapy, or even throughout the day, and how much you take. And like one of my clients, for example, she tried some of the exact supplements that I recommended to her before, but she didn't take the right amount in the right sequence when she did it without me. And so she only got the result that she was really looking for with those same supplements when she worked with me, because the combination of the right supplements coupled with each other with the right diet and the right healing modalities is what gets you the result. The best way to measure and expect your progress is this, right? You want to understand that there is such thing as a qualitative analysis, right? A quantitative analysis is blood work. That's numbers based. You're looking at numbers and you're trying to get all the numbers to a certain range. A qualitative analysis is deciding whether or not you feel better or worse. It's understanding if your hair is getting thicker or thinning. A qualitative analysis could be enough to show us if we're actually moving in the right direction or we're not, if the plan is working or if it's not. And even though regardless of whether you're going the quantitative right route or the qualitative route, your results are never going to be a straight shot up. It's never you're always going to have some turbulence on the flight, right? You're going to get to the destination, but there's going to be some turbulence along the way, and that's to be expected. So you should be able to tell what's working and what isn't and how to troubleshoot just based on how your body is responding if you're seeing new symptoms or new signs of improvement. This particular lady that worked with me, she remember I told you results are not guaranteed and they will vary because every single person is going to have a different past, a different amount of resources, a different willingness to prevail. But this particular lady got these results in 4 months, and she had hair loss for 25 years, and she had gotten I don't remember, it was like 1/3 or 2/3 of her colon cut out because of a gastric bypass surgery, which she did to lose weight. That surgery was successful. She lost the weight, but she lost the hair in the process too. And so she thought, are you sure that I can regrow my hair after 25 years of loss? And it's just the fact that I have to be nutrient efficient because I literally don't have the gut there anymore to absorb the nutrients. And I said to her, honey, your issue isn't as much nutrient deficiency, though that is playing a role, but the body is amazing in what it can do to help somebody heal even after a surgery like that. Your issue is you're having like a bunch of fibrosis going on in there that your body just never got a chance to break down, and it's progressively getting worse. And so we need to shift the body into a healing state, and we need to help reverse the damage in order for you to get the results. And 4 months later, that's how she was looking. So the question is like, can we turn off or dial down the genes that trickle down to hair loss by addressing the basics and following how we feel? And the answer is absolutely yes. It's not the only thing to do, but it definitely is the best place to start. So my question to you is, are you starting to see how hair regrowth is possible for your hair loss type, regardless of your genes, regardless of your labs, regardless of what the doctor told you was possible or not, regardless of your beliefs, and regardless of everything else that you've already tried? Are you starting to see that hair loss is reversible? Let me get a heck yeah. Even though I can't hear you, I can feel you. Okay. And so I want to encourage you guys to go to my website, which is belcanics.com. There's a free training there, Belcanics, BELLECHANICS.com. And there's a training on the top mistakes that women make when they're trying to reverse their hair loss naturally and what they should be doing instead. So make sure you check. You have time to check it. It's always on the website. But I would check it, sooner than later, because it's going to give you more understanding of why everything that you've been doing so far hasn't been working and why there are other things that you can do that can work much better. So as you see here, there's some examples of people that had massive amounts of shedding, and that shedding has definitely improved. And so that's definitely one of the first focuses that we have whenever we're working with someone in our community, is like, how do we get you to lose less hair? Because that's a sign that either your immune system is overreacting or you have too much toxicity as well as a hormonal imbalance. And so all of these things are possible, right? That could be leading to the shedding. And so those are usually the things that we're looking at. Mast cell activation syndrome is actually pretty common with that. Histamine intolerance is pretty common with that when we're seeing a lot of hair shedding. But let's hear what some of my students had to say.
But it's success in 10 years, and it's been devastating. So this here, working with you this past couple of months or month and a half, ever how long it's been, I've got more results in that short of time than I have in 10 years.
Wow.
Here's one more.
So if you had to do like one final endorsement remark about this program, about the coaching, about someone who's, doesn't know if they should go in or not, what would you say?
So I would say, like me, for example, I've already spent so much money and it didn't work and it didn't help, you know? And finally, I would say that this is probably like one of the first programs that has actually like worked. I can see the results. I can see things that no one's told me that I should have been doing, you know? So like I think it's definitely worth the investment in that way that you'll get something different, something you've never done before.
But
Really,
like
I can
the-
tell you,
Oh,
I
let's
have.
go. Sorry, let's go to the
so if
next
you had
screen. All right, so we're wrapping up this special masterclass edition, you guys. I really wanted to, I don't know if I'm gonna see some of you guys again, right? And I really wanted to take the time to kind of give you a bird's eye view, big level overview, kind of putting together all the things that were talked about in general over the masterclass, or not the masterclass, over the summit, to help you really understand why hair loss is reversible even for you, right? So we know that hair growth isn't as impossible as you thought it was. Hopefully by now you're starting to feel that way. And so I just want to explain to you like what the next couple of days are going to look like, or by that I mean what Sunday is going to look like. Today was all about why hair growth is available to you. So hopefully after watching this special masterclass edition, you really got to understand like, gosh, I think hair loss is reversible, even for me. And so if you feel like you understand that now, then I did a good job today. And so I want to remind you guys to go to my website, belcanics.com, watch the training on the top mistakes that women make when they're trying to attempt to reverse their hair loss naturally, and why they don't get the resolution. So why you have failed in the past and what actually is going to work. And if you have any questions about the summit, feel free to email me. Okay. Um, you got the email that's sending you all of the talks. Go ahead and reply to that email if you have a question about the summit. Not what not what the experts talked about, right? Because I'd be answering emails forever, but just like, oh, I didn't get my recording for this day, or I don't know how to find the recording for that day, or I don't know how to find the VIP offer or whatever. Myself and my team are there to support you, to make sure that you get everything that you need to get the most out of this experience. But if you are in my Facebook group, Reversing Hair Loss Naturally, I do encourage my group members to direct message me on Facebook. So you'll find me in the Facebook group, right? So Real Vasquez, I'm in that Facebook group. So you can direct message me with a question about hair loss and thinning. And I won't answer it in the message, but I will answer it on a live call. So I go live once a week for the community, usually Thursday or Friday. More often on Thursdays, I go live and I talk about the answers to whatever questions were asked to me that week. Either people ask it to me one-on-one in the chats, or sometimes they post it as a comment to my question on Wednesday. Because on Wednesday, I always make a post that's called Why Wednesday. And I ask people like, hey, what question do you have on hair loss and thinning? And then they go ahead and they ask me the question there. And like the first 10 questions, I answer. The rest of them, I either like make a reel to answer the question, make a separate post to answer the question, or I leave it for next week. So I try to serve the community and kind of stay in touch with you guys, and just kind of stay in touch with the confusion you guys might have or the questions you might have, to just be that source of hope for whenever you're ready to take the next right step for you in reversing your hair loss naturally. So if you want to talk to me, go find me in the Facebook group, because I'm available to take your questions and answer them on the live call. So that was all today, you guys. So part 2 is on Sunday, okay? And so Sunday is all about how we figure out what turns on your genes in the first place, and this concept of the triggering event, right? We all were living our lives normally and we had hair that we felt beautiful and confident with. And then all of a sudden, something happened. And we're going to talk about that on Sunday. It could have been maybe you got that shot, maybe you got menopause, maybe you started washing your hair with a certain shampoo, or you started doing braids on your hair. Something happened that all of a sudden your hair was not the same and it either started shedding more or it was unable to regrow the same way. And so we're going to talk about the triggering event. And I'm also going to explain how I map out what in the world could have happened with you and why that problem continues to happen that leads to perpetual shedding and perpetual thinning and balding, where your body, it's so cyclical and it's happening just on its own, progressively worse to the point where your body isn't able to autocorrect. So I'm going to talk about that on Sunday. So I hope I see you on the live call, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Also, I wanted to remind you, all the replays are available for 48 hours. So you have 48 hours to watch every day's daily episodes. I usually release 3, 4, 5 episodes in a day. So you have 48 hours to watch that. And then if you feel like, man, I wanted to watch this one and I didn't get to watch it, or I wanted to re-listen to this one or that one, or maybe this one, because this one's really long, right? Because it's a special masterclass edition, then you get to keep the replays if you upgrade to VIP, right? So definitely take advantage of that. You can also obtain the transcripts. So you have like a written version of what was said as well, in case you're the type of person that likes to read or you want to just skim through to a certain part. You don't have to go back and forth with the video. You could just kind of do a word search on your computer um, with the Google Doc and see if you could find it that way. And then also, what if you get the $97 offer for VIP, that means that you're going to sit down with me and I would love to meet you. And what that looks like is you're going to get a tracker. It's actually in the book, but it's a few pages long and there's a ton of symptoms on there and you get to grade them. You get to say like 0, I never get this, or like 4, I get this every day. And what that's going to do is going to allow me to sit down with you and just be able to tell you what I'm noticing could be the systems that are affected. Because there's a certain set of symptoms that are affected by that are affected in your nervous system or your lymphatic system. And so the symptoms match the systems. And so I'm going to be looking at that. And I'll also be able to give you some supplement recommendations just based on the supplements that were shared in the summit, not overall. Because most of the time with my clients, I create supplement protocols where I have to watch them to get them to the finish line and give them that finished result. And so the supplements where I know that we can get you some relief and I don't have to watch you, and they were talked about on the summit, I can guide you to make sure that you get the biggest bang for your buck and tell you based on your symptoms like which one of those you should get. So, and what you can expect from using it. So that's another benefit of that. And you also get the latest version of my book, Becoming a Volcanic. So if you took that quiz, I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was a quiz to win mini coaching, like a mini case analysis. It's like a 15-minute call with me where we're gonna focus and you're just gonna tell me like in 5 minutes or less what happened with your hair. And I'm gonna tell you how I feel functional medicine can help you, or if it can't, with your hair in your situation. And just kind of like help you analyze the case, and then I'll give you some next steps. So some people they entered that raffle and they won the coaching, right? And they got a book, but that was the old version of the book. And they got it just for doing the quiz. You get my first version of the book. You get volume 1 of my book, Becoming a Volcanic, just for entering the raffle, just for filling out the form. But when you upgrade to VIP, you get volume 2, which has a lot more in it. It has the symptoms tracker. It has an updated list of foods to eat and foods not to eat. There's just more stuff in there. So that's something else that you get when you upgrade to VIP. And besides the tracker, you also get like what to eat, what not to eat. And then also the last thing is you get a curated supplement guide. So you get this guide for different supplements that were, and so I even threw some supplements in there that weren't talked about in the summit, but there's supplements that I blanket use for people with hair loss and thinning that I don't necessarily have to monitor them for. And so I wanted to provide as much value as possible to try to give anybody who's watching this some relief. And in that supplements guide, there's even a discount of $144 off of a root cause resolution roadmap, which is what you're going to find out about on Sunday, because I'm going to go through a sample one so you could see what I do to help get my clients the resolution and kind of map out what their road to Healthyville is going to look like. So, um, I all the supplements I recommend in that guide are looking at that root cause approach, right? The the toxemia aspect of it, you know, the parasympathetic aspect of it. So it's not like a hair loss supplement, like all these different hair loss supplements. It's like these different supplements that are there to address the real root cause. And you'll see that when you get enough of those introduced to cover enough of the root causes, because hair loss is multifactorial, that's when you start feeling some relief. So, one word about that $97 offer when you upgrade. That root cause, the supplements guide, or not the supplements guide, I'm sorry, that one-on-one call that we have, you have to do a symptoms tracker so that you can get the most benefit out of the call. The way that you get that is by using the discount code provided. So there's a discount code that gets provided to you when you upgrade to VIP so that you can go to my website and you can purchase that. So right now on my website, it's $111 just to do that call with me. And for $97, you get that plus all the other stuff that I mentioned. So it's a really good deal, you guys. And I'm just stressing that so that you understand how to take advantage of it. You have to go onto my website and use the discount code that's provided for VIP. So you get the supplements, the symptoms tracker, and fill that all out and then book the call with me. Okay. So if you guys have any questions, you can always email me. But the point that I'm trying to make is we get to sit down, you and I, for 30 minutes. We're going to go over your symptoms. You have to fill out that symptoms tracker. The only way you get it is if you use the discount code that's provided when you upgrade to VIP, and you have to put that into my website. So all the directions are provided for you. There's a button that you get to click, but the button says use discount code, blah, blah, blah. So don't forget to use the discount code. Don't pay the $111 because you get that for free when you upgrade with the $97 offer. Okay. All right. So Sunday, you guys, Sunday. Oh my God, I'm so excited to be in everybody's live energy. I can't wait to see you guys on Sunday. Sunday, don't forget, I'm going to be picking some winners, which is so exciting. One winner is going to get a root cause resolution roadmap, which is what I'm going to show you guys on Sunday. It's this process I take my clients through to help them understand what the real root causes are and what's the best way for them to fix it using functional medicine. And they'll also get 50% off of any of my packages. Second place winner will get 40% off of any of the packages, and third place winner will get 25% off of any of the packages. So I'm so excited. Yes, can't wait to see you guys. Thank you so much for watching this special masterclass edition. And just remember, I'm here for you guys. Don't forget to join the Facebook group Reversing Hair Loss Naturally, and don't forget to come on Sunday. And my prayer for you guys is that by the time you're done with the summit, at the very least, I just pray that every single one of you guys understands that hair loss is reversible and you don't have to suffer anymore. Okay, so love you guys, and I'll see you guys on Sunday.